Welcome, everyone. Dr. Anthony Criniti IV here, also known as Dr. Finance. You're on the Dr. Finance Live podcast. I want to thank everyone for being here today. Folks, if you want to find out more information about this site, go to drfinance.info. We've got an amazing guest today. We've got Dr. Robert Goldman, also known as Dr. Bob Goldman. He is an incredible a person of so many talents. I don't even know how to explain him. He's got so many. This is his trophy room right here. he's a medical doctor at the highest level. He's also an expert martial artist. So many different levels. He's got tons of books out there, internationally known. So let's get to know Dr. Bob Goldman. Welcome, Dr. Bob. How are you, sir?
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Bob, and the way that the show begins is, if you can, just maybe a 30-second snapshot, just tell us a little about yourself, and then we'll get into a story for about 20, 30 minutes. And then I normally have about 15, 20 questions, but I'm so honored to have you here today. I have about 25 questions for you. You're a wealth of knowledge of so many areas, so I'm so completely honored. This has been an interview 5 years in the making. I first met you, I don't know if you remember, this is at the convention in Atlantic City about 5 years ago for martial arts. So, ever since then, I was a big fan. So welcome, Dr. Bob.
Thank you. Well, just as an overview, I really like to start new industries. The area of personal fitness trainers, I started NASM, the National Academy of Sports Medicine, back in the late 80s. And now, as you know, personal training is, there are millions of people involved in this worldwide. When I started, there was never even a certification. So I actually wrote the first certification, coined the term CPT, Certified Personal Trainer, and launched that industry. And then as we all get a bit older, we're concerned about our aging processes. So I started A4M, the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, which is the largest anti-aging medical society, exposition group, conference group, congress group in the world in terms of educating doctors. And we've trained over 150,000 physicians. For over 40 years, I served as chief physician for the International Federation of Bodybuilders and was the world medical chairman of their group in the sport of bodybuilding and fitness, which is over 194 countries. And that was running that position for decades. And in the past, had served as chairman of the AU-USA Sports Medicine Council, which again is millions of athletes. And then in the US, you've heard of the President's Council on Sport, or what we call the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition. I served with Arnold Schwarzenegger back in the 90s under Old Man Bush. And I was the only American to ever serve under 4 different presidents. The most anybody else had served under was 2. So I recently retired from that position under the President administration. So I've had a very, enjoyable run so far. Hope to do a lot more, but so far it's been quite interesting.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Appreciate you. So Dr. Bob, if you don't mind, I love to dive into your story, because one of the things that I really like to highlight on the show is, you get to see a lot of really great people that come through here and hear their stories. But most people, when they see someone very successful at face value, they just assume they just magically got that way. So what I like to do is highlight what they went through to actually build up to reach that level. And this paints a more realistic picture for a lot of the audience to understand that becoming a successful entrepreneur requires a lot of hard work and a lot of failures that you need to go through. So if you want to start back from the beginning, I know that you had a humble background, similar to me, actually. I didn't realize this in New York. I'm from Philadelphia, and I started in South Philly, and you started in New York, but you started out poor too. So I'd love to hear your story. If you can tell us maybe the first 10 years or so, where you're originally from, et cetera.
Well, I was born in Brooklyn Women's Hospital. I grew up in the projects, like what we call, I guess you heard the term, the ghetto. We grew up in the projects there, and everyone was poor, so you didn't know you were poor. And it was, fairly dangerous growing up. A lot like, just walking to school, you're going to get beat up, in situations. So I guess that was a reason for trying to build strength sports and martial arts training at a young age, just to try and stay alive. So building strength and power was always physical power was always something, a fascination of mine. That's why young kids always like Superman comics and, the hero comics. You all want to be a superhero. And that's why a lot of kids will read the comic books they enjoy. And today you see the great manifestation of people really enjoying those different Avengers and superheroes and all this sort of stuff. So I started training at a very young age in a very diligent fashion, probably around the age of 12. First time I touched the pull-up bar in my little elementary school, I broke the school record. And I said, wow, I'm pretty good at this. So I started training very diligently and hit world level, started breaking world records at age 14 till I was 28 when I retired, and set over 20 world records and a number of things in Guinness World Book, like 13,500 straight leg sit-ups and 321 consecutive freestanding handstand push-ups and an array of other things. So we all fail, and what people have to understand, even if you look at an Arnold Schwarzenegger or your greatest sports hero, we all fail, and we fail numerous times, but we don't view it as failure. We view it as a learning experience. The thing is as Rocky says, it's not how you get knocked down, it's how you pick yourself up. Being from Philly, I'm sure you understand that. It's how your perseverance and your perseverance will overcome your persistence will overcome the obstacles that you run into. But everybody has obstacles, and that is a lifelong situation. So people just have to have enough belief in themselves, not get frustrated, and just keep driving ahead and realize we're living in a very tough world. It's really tough today out there, but it's always been tough. People just have more advanced communication abilities today, so they know more about the trials and tribulations of themselves and others, but it's always been a really rough ride. So I think the thing that people have to keep in their heads is you just can't give up, because you got one ride here. Try and get as far and as high as you can while helping others, giving back along that process.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Appreciate you. Is there maybe a few stories that you'd like to share about your first 10, 20 years growing up, just to paint the picture of your area, your neighborhood, and that probably will highlight how you got into martial arts, I'm assuming.
Well, if I go all the way back to like fourth grade, I was just a little peewee kid, and I'm walking in the school hallway. This is one of the ghetto schools, and there are four guys coming at me, and I go, I don't know what to do. So one lunges at me, and by accident, I actually grabbed his arm by accident, and he goes flying over me. And the kids go, "Oh, you know karate?" I go, "Yeah, I know karate." I didn't know anything, And then I'll give you a best view. I'll give you my first day of junior high school. I may be 5 foot, 5'2". I'm a little kid. I'm like 12. I'm 12 or 13 years old. Actually, I was 12 because I just got out of sixth grade going into seventh. And I go into the schoolyard. Now realize the schoolyard where we played was not like the schoolyards like you may think, where there's grass and trees and a nice baseball field. You're in the center of a bunch of ghetto projects that are burning garbage, and the garbage is raining down on your head. The schoolyard is a bunch of broken concrete and broken glass, and that's where we would play before school would start. And the guys were playing a game called punch ball. We had a little pink ball that you would punch, and they wouldn't let me play. So this kid's about half a foot taller than me. I get in a fight with him. I beat him up so I can get to play. Then a guy who's way, way bigger than me, and this is mostly a black neighborhood, and I was one of the few white kids in the schoolyard at the time. And he goes, "You messing with my man?" And I'm going, "No," because this guy's like the size of a man. I'm a little pipsqueak. And he starts beating the hell out of me. And then a bigger black guy than him, who's like 300 pounds, knocks him off of me with a baseball bat. Well, later on, they became friends with both of them. They were, impressed that a little peewee kid, sort of stuck up for his own. And we've ended up playing high school football and wrestling together. Unfortunately, they both had died. One was killed by the police during a theft, and the other one died of HIV. The larger of the two died of HIV from drug abuse. And so, unfortunately, a lot of these guys that I grew up with are no longer with us, and things just sort of went the wrong way. And that could have happened with me, but I always had an aversion to, taking even an aspirin. I didn't want to take any kind of drug, let alone any heavy, what they would call a drug of abuse. So I never had any interest in that. And sport was always my escape from the bad things that happened. But even being one of the few Jew kids in the neighborhood, walking to the synagogue on the weekend, you're going to get beat up. They used to throw bricks through the windows there, and I mean, it was just a daily thing. It was just something that you were used to. If you were fortunate enough to have a bicycle, they try and hit you with a stickball bat to get you up and steal your bike. So, I mean, this is just part of growing up. We didn't view ourselves as poor or underprivileged. We were just, everybody was. So you didn't really think about it, but you knew you wanted to try and get out, and you wanted to try and, because in the movies, you can see there was a different life out there, but you really didn't think that you would ever get there, because back at that time, I was at the tail end of Vietnam. So I figured I was going to get killed in Vietnam anyway. But I was the last group before, and if I had gotten drafted at that, I was number 34, which means I would have put right on the front lines. And being the kind of hero mindset, I would have been the first guy to get shot. I would have been the first one, go on over the hill and go at him. I would have been the first idiot shot.
Wait,
sure.
so you sorry to interrupt you, really believed that if you got drafted, that you're going to die anyway? You had that?
Oh yeah, I figured I'd be dead by 18.
Wow.
Because I knew that if they sent me over, due to the way my brain was wired in terms of, trying to be fearless or trying to lead, I would have been the first one running over the hill with my rifle, going at him, and I would have been the first one shot for sure. So I didn't think I was get past 18, 19 years old.
That's amazing.
Fortunately, they stopped the draft, because once I got my draft number, which was like in the low 30s, those were the guys they sent to the front line. So I wasn't like number 300 or so. I was number 39, which means I was toast. There was, I was coming home in a body bag.
Wow. It's so perfect timing that everything worked out that way.
Same thing happened to my dad. My dad was a paratrooper in the Korean War, and his troop was getting ready to go over to Korea to jump into, the war zone. And they gave all the guys shots of vitamin K. Well, my dad had a horrible allergic reaction to the vitamin K. He ended up in the hospital for like 3 weeks. All his troop went over. All the other paratroopers went over. They all died on that jump.
What?
And so if he had not gotten sick as a dog and was in the hospital for 3 weeks, he would have ended up being on that jump, and that means I wouldn't be here right now.
Wow.
So it's all, these kind of quirky, like Benjamin Buttons kind of circumstances that, this happened to that, and then the next thing happened, and you end up either being around or not being around just by pure circumstance and luck.
The butterfly effect, it's just...
Pretty much, yeah, the butterfly effect. Correct, yeah.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bob. So obviously you didn't get drafted, but what was your... Let's just step back again for a second. So what was your growing up like entrepreneur wise? Did you have all different kinds of business jobs? Were you paper boy, bus boy, any of that kind of stuff? Did you have that drive too?
Oh yeah, no, I always worked. I worked from by when I was 7 or 8 years old, I was shoveling snow, and by 9 or 10 using a hand mower to mow the neighbors' lawns, and taking any kind of job, working in food service, moving boxes, and any kind of job to try and at least make some money. In fact, people go, "Oh, you're a doctor. Do you play golf?" Well, no, I never played around the golf in my life, but I have been on golf courses, because in the good neighborhood, which I'd have to take 3 buses to get to, was where the golf course was, where the well-to-do families were. And back then they didn't have the golf cart, so I was the guy who was carrying the golf bags, for hours. And I would work a whole day and maybe make $2, but to me, I didn't mind, because it'd be a good workout. Same thing like on the beach, you used to have the guys who had the large bin that you would carry around in the soft sand that had ice cream in it. And you try to make like $2 or $3 for a day of lunging, and carrying around a 50-pound crate of ice cream. But again, I didn't mind these things, because to me, they were a workout. So I actually looked for those kind of jobs that were physically demanding, because it would be like part of my workout. But yeah, I worked my entire life, and at this age, I still work. I don't have to anymore, obviously, because of my financial status, but I still get up every day. And I'll tell you an interesting story. Ben Weeder, Ben Weider, the Weider Foundation, who started Muscle and Fitness, Flex Magazine, and the whole Weider dynasty, starting the sport of bodybuilding. They made tons of money during selling their equipment company and the nutrition company and all these other deals. So I remember when I wrote Ben a letter when I was 14 saying I wanted to be a doctor one day. And he came back and we developed a friendship. And I didn't meet him until many years later when I became of age and was in medical school and I was getting ready to graduate. I became head of his medical commission. And what was interesting, years prior to that, I wrote a report on anabolic steroids, which had about 250 medical references. But I was a kid. I was like 18, 19 years old when I did the report. And his whole medical committee said, this is nonsense. This kid, he's just a kid. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So they refused to publish it. And he apologized to me. He said, look, I'd really like to publish this report. I think you did a great job. But my whole committee says that it's garbage and we can't publish it. Well, a few years later, I took over the committee, fired his entire committee, appointed a new committee. They ended up publishing the report, which ended up being correct in all the different areas that I was bringing up in terms of the abuse of various anabolic steroids in high dosage. And it ended up being the most successful report in the history of the 50-year history of the Federation and was translated into 36 languages. So, sometimes it takes a lot of no's to get a yes. And so people, even whether in acting or job interviews or whatever it may be, every no brings you closer to the yes. So you just have to not get discouraged and not give up on yourself. It's like Colonel Sanders with KFC, when he get like 15,000 no's before he finally got a yes, and he was in his 60s, or I forget how old he was, but he didn't give up on the dream. And but it's not just the dream, it's the work that needs to go behind the dream. And I think the problem with a lot of the young people today is they're just given stuff. I mean, you got winners, you got losers. You got in a sport competition, one guy's going to win, another guy's going to lose. There's no participation trophies way back when we were competing. You either broke the world record or you didn't break the world record. You either won the tournament or you didn't win the tournament. And I think today we've got a lot of distortions that are really harmful. I mean, we used to play outside all day when we were young kids. I mean, we would get up at sunrise and we'd be playing out in the schoolyard or whatever. We had real friends, real people, not virtual people on a computer, not texting, DMs, and all this other nonsense. We interacted with each other, and you get in fights. And you'd be friends after. I mean, today you get in a fight, you get thrown out of school, you get banned, you get censored. All this craziness is going on, which is going to lead to a real distortion of young people and their mindset and how spoiled they are. I mean, it really is. There's a lot of things going on today, which I think are terribly harmful to the young people in terms of what kind of people they will be as they become adults.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Bob. So, Dr. Bob, if we can, let's fast forward into your high school career. So you went to high school, you graduated. When did you eventually move out of Brooklyn, and what was your academics look like? Because I know that you eventually got the highest level. You became a medical doctor, I believe.
Yeah. Well, when I was in high school, I lettered in 4 sports. So I go from wrestling to over to the football to over to the powerlifting so it was like one sport after another. So I was very sports driven. My grades were okay. They weren't great, but I was also an artist. I was a prodigy art student. So I had scholarships to Parsons and to Pratt, which were top art institutions, but I didn't go to those because I wanted to get a more balanced education, and I would prefer to become wealthy one day where I could buy art versus having to be dependent on wealthy people to buy my art. So I continued doing artwork for a while, but I did not choose that as a profession. I was quite successful being a city champion wrestling in high school. So I received an offer for scholarship to Annapolis, the Navy Academy, on a wrestling scholarship, which I turned down because I heard it was an all-boys school, and I said, I'll die a virgin, so I don't want to go there. So I ended up going to Brooklyn College, which at that time was very inexpensive or free. So I still had to live at home because I couldn't afford to go away to college. That was never even a thought process that I could actually go away, because there's no way, we could afford that, and also had to help the family out. So, I went through college. I was pre-med,
So
but
you
it was
stayed
very
in Brooklyn while you were going to college.
well, yeah, my family moved to Rockaway, to Far Rock. So we lived in the projects in Far Rock, and eventually moved to a small little home, which, for us was really different. We didn't have I have two brothers, so we didn't have the three of us in one room. That was kind of unique, to actually have a little room for yourself. That was really a unique experience. And then, in college, I was still living at home during college, because I couldn't afford a car or anything of that sort. Then during college, I applied to medical school, but I was working 3 jobs and also training for the Olympic Games in freestyle wrestling back then. So my grades weren't that great. So I had to apply to med school 3 times in a row, because my grades weren't that great. And so I took some additional coursework, eventually did get into medical school. So I have 4 doctorates. I'm an MD, a DO, which is osteopathic physician, a medical doctor, and also have 2 PhDs, one in androgenic steroid biochemistry and the other in health sciences.
Wait a minute, you have four doctorate degrees? Did you?
Yeah.
Were they earned or were they honorary?
No, these no, yeah. I did a combined 8-year fellowship when I was in medical school. So, I didn't do the 4 years, I did 8. And then did some and then did a fair amount of postdoctoral work as well.
Wow.
And use the knowledge, the PhD knowledge, along with my MD and DO knowledge. And that's why, like yourself, I've authored over 50 books and hundreds of articles over the years. In fact, I have a scientific paper coming out that I think is really going to turn the world on its ear. It's how we use really exercise training programs, where we actually got parameters to change in people who could barely walk, and they ended up running a marathon at the end. That paper will be coming out. In fact, I'm submitting the final paper in the next week, and that will be published in the next 30 days. It's like a 55-page peer-reviewed medical paper with hundreds of references. And it's really, the results are quite profound. So, it's been a very interesting ride academically, but I think I'm most happy about having to try to create industry. Because of starting the personal trainer profession, there are millions of people around the world whose lives are affected. The trainers who are now making a living out from it, and the millions of people whose health is benefited by having an educated NASM certified trainer. And the same with doctors, teaching doctors how to know about nutrition and training and everything from stem cells, nanotech, and so on, through the AFREM World Congresses, which are the largest type of medical conferences in the world. And due to the contacts that I got through the Sports Federation, we've held these conferences all over the world, and everywhere from Dubai, Australia, Singapore, Malaysia. I mean, I've been around the world probably a few hundred times. I've been to Singapore 50 times. I've been to Hong Kong, Australia, Dubai, Qatar, Bahrain, and so on, because my Sports Federation work got me entrees to ministers of health and ministers of sport in these various federations. And that's thanks to Ben Weider from the IFBB, the International Federation of Bodybuilders, who was my mentor. And I've had great mentors, everyone from Jack LaLanne, whose records were the first world records I broke. I worked for Jack in the old Jack Lane health clubs in New York on the East Coast. Reg Park, who was Arnold Schwarzenegger's idol, was a mentor of mine, and Joe and Ben Weider were mentors. So I had really some amazing teachers over the years who helped to guide me, and that's why I try to guide others, as they had been so kind to give their time and energy towards me.
So, Dr. Bob, one of the things I find amazing about you is many of the people I interview, they usually go one way or the other. Some are very diverse, but you've actually mastered both. Like, from an academic standpoint, you've reached the highest levels of the academia as well as the highest levels of physical world in different capacities at the same time. What is your typical schedule look like? How much time do you have in a day for sleep? And how long has this schedule's been going on? Is this the way you've been operating, I'm assuming, for a long period of time?
Well, it's kind of interesting, when you listen to Elon Musk, you don't feel like you've
Six
really done
hours
a
of
heck
sleep,
of a
he says.
lot.
Yeah, Elon, 6 hours.
Yeah, but I mean, he managed, he sleeps in the office. I mean, my schedule, not now, but for many, many years, I would say from like my early 20s, because when you're younger in your teens, you need the extra sleep to grow and physically, and I was doing a lot of very physically demanding stuff. I mean, you guys may have heard about the backstreet fights in Chinatown where we do like the kumite kind of things. Well, I used to go to those, but in Chinatown when I was in my late teens, I used to fight. I used to fight in those back alley things, and I was like the only white kid. They're all black, Puerto Rican, and Chinese. They go, "What are you doing here?" I used to sneak out of the house to take the train into the city to go to, because I was doing training. I was doing martial arts, kung fu, all this training way, way back when. This was all pre-UFC. So there were no doctors around. There was no refs. I mean, you went at it until somebody was out, and people really got hurt. I mean, it was pretty crazy, dangerous stuff. So my schedule back after I got through that insanity and those kind of really dicey things that I used to do back then, I was going on like 2 to 4 hours of sleep at night. Because as an example, when I was always working 2 or 3 jobs, whether I was from like high school on, I always worked jobs, multiple jobs in order to have enough money to get by, and also to help the family. So by the time I reached medical school, I mean, I'd get up at 4 a.m. to draw blood before I went to medical school. And then after, I'd work in the gyms, either teaching martial arts or in the Chicago Health Club, working in the floor in the gyms to try and make enough to get by. I had a $10 a week food budget. I was sleeping on the floor with the cockroaches in an apartment with 6 other guys who sometimes would come in drunk and drop kick me in the middle of the night. I was officially the poorest kid in my medical school class. It's just the way it was. But again, you just kind of get through it. But I used to get by on 2 to 4 hours of sleep a night. Now I get normal sleep patterns. I don't need to work like that anymore. But during the good bulk of my career, I would say I probably got by on 2 to 4 hours a week. Also, because I was on an international schedule. When you go to sleep at night here in the US, well, it's morning in Asia. And then early morning, it's morning in London and in Europe. So I used to work on 3 different time zones. I was working on US hours, Asia hours, and then Euro hours. So for a good portion of my career, for a good 20 to 30 years, I was working almost around the clock. My phone would never, when we had cell phones, remember, cell phones we didn't have all those years, but I was working around the clock, pretty much, just with 2 to 4 hours of sleep.
Wow.
Well, I mean, it's sort of like, Arnold would say he would overwork the other guys, the competition. You
Right.
had to overwork them. It's like a Kobe Bryant or a Michael Jordan. You overwork the competition. You just beat them by pure work ethic. And that was my approach as well. Because to me, I had 3 days in a 24-hour period, not 8 hours during the day. I had that 24 hours. I had 3 work days in that 24 hours with a 2-hour nap.
Well, see, I'm all for that. It's just the sleep thing. Like the sleep is, you find out, as a medical doctor, sleep is so important. One of the top things that you need in life. At what cost did all this do? Like losing sleep like that? Is it worth it for entrepreneurs? I mean, what's the message we're sending out to the people?
Well, it's not healthy. Yeah, I agree. It's not a healthy thing. It was more out of necessity that I did it. It's not something I would necessarily recommend. I think people need to have 5 or 6 hours a night, in order to, and if you're a young person, you definitely need at least 6 to 8 hours, because that's when growth hormone is released at night when you're sleeping. And some people cannot function well if they don't get enough sleep. Like Elon Musk will say, look, I need my 6, 7 hours a night, or even Jeff Bezos would say the same thing. Due to my genetics, I was able to get by. Like I don't get hypoglycemia. I never get a headache. I don't get sick. I can go. I have odd genetics, which I guess was helpful in setting all these world endurance records. So I was able to physically withstand lack of sleep or lack of food or so on. But it's not something I would recommend to everyone, because some people, if they don't get enough sleep, they can't function. And that's where, it's made, whether Bezos or Musk will say, hey, look, I need to get that sleep to function properly. So it's not for everyone. Not everybody can physically handle it. So it's not something I would recommend, but for me, it was a necessary part of getting to where I wanted to go.
So you're would you say, I mean, I don't know how else to better put this. You're basically a work machine. You know how to organize your life to the point where you're task focused, and you'll do what you got to do, whether or not it's sacrifice a little bit sleep, when not, maybe not now, but before, when you were in your A game. Would you say that was one way to describe it?
Yeah, it's focus. People spend a lot of time getting very little done. You see, the key is the focus of getting the job done. Sometimes people, a smart boss will say, look, I don't care if it takes you an hour or it takes you 6 weeks to get this done, but you got to get this done. Well, the smart guy is going to try and get this done properly in that short period of time. And so because I have a kind of interesting memory, I don't have a didactic memory where I was really good at school. I was not good in school. I was not a good test taker, but I'm really good at spatial memory. In other words, when I built a number of large homes and things. So in my brain, I could in 3D know where everything's going to fit like a puzzle. And even though I never took a business course in my life, I've developed probably 30, 40 companies, some of them public companies, during the course of my career. I never took any law classes, yet I write legal briefs and private placement memorandums and all these things. So I'm able to learn certain skill sets very quickly, not in a conventional way. Like as an example, if I'm looking for a document, that's why I like printed documents versus, it's good to have things backed up on computer and so on, but I like printed documents. So I have file cabinets, but I know in my mind, I can visualize where I put a certain piece of paper that has to do with a certain deal or a certain legal situation. Where in my brain, it's like a file cabinet. I know exactly what drawer to go to, how far back in the drawer it is. I can visualize that. Yet if you gave me a multiple choice question on a typical exam in school, I was not very good at that at all. But for some reason, my brain works very well in 3D spatial. And that's why when I build certain structures, I know exactly where every single piece is going to go. And people will come and go, how'd you know that this was going to fit here and fit there? It's just something that my brain was wired. In fact, I was opposed to any business, even in the health club business. I did not want to go into sales. I just wanted to teach people how to work out. And I purposely did not, even though you can make a lot more money selling people memberships, I never wanted to do that. And so I did not even get into business until towards the end of my medical school, my first 4 years of med school, until I sort of like just pushed myself and found that I was like an idiot savant in business where I could manage 8 companies in my head without even using notes. Now, I didn't know I had that skill set. It just sort of happened by circumstance and need to being able to manage a number of different things. And so it was sort of like, that savant kind of skill set. Again, that's not something I recommend, because to me, I was fortunate. I just like physically, I had certain skill sets. In terms of business management, I had certain skill sets. But I think most people, they do need the extra sleep. They do need to be organized. They may need more time to complete a certain task. But if they are able to get away from wasting time, people like to waste time. They stare blankly. They daydream. It's just even like a workout. You go in the gym, either work out, focus, get your workout done, get out. When I work out in the gym, I'll do my whole weightlifting workout in 20 minutes. I don't sit there and spend 4 hours in the gym. I know what the muscles should feel like. I know the biomechanics. I know I don't have to lift the heaviest weight because I'm going to get injured. So it's focus. So I think if entrepreneurs can focus better and not get distraction, it's sort of like if you're going to do a board break, and you want to put your chi in, you want to go see your hand going through the board. It's the same way. Some people kind of jerk around in the gym or jerk around in their martial arts training or be very focused. And so I think that's how people as entrepreneurs can do a lot better. But the passion is also important. I think, finding things that you really like or that you really want to make a change. And it can't be about you. It's got to be more global. It's got to be what it is that I am doing will have an impact on the world and on many others. To me, even when I had no money, I always tried to give back. I always tried to have some degree of generosity and charity. So even when I was poor, I would always try to contribute to other things. And then when I became well-to-do financially, I found that I have like 4 or 5 nonprofits, and I fund them, and I try to, do good with those nonprofits, and that will impact others. So, but in reference to entrepreneur, I know I jumped around a bit on this question. It's really focused and not wasting time and not getting frustrated. People spend, I think the best way to think about it is when I was in school, I'd be pissed off that, oh, gee, I couldn't go out and have fun with my friends because I had no money or time to do it. And then when I was out with my friends, I'd be worried about school. So people tend to worry about the things at the wrong time. So if somebody has money problems when they're out on a holiday or they're trying to enjoy their family, they're worried about the money problems. And when they were working at work, they're worried about their family. And they should be worried about their family when they're with their family. And they should be focused on work when they're at work. People tend to mix those two up with each other.
Bob, that was a package full of just brilliant advice from all levels. To end on the last point you just said, though, it's so true. Like, there's nothing you can do when you're with your family, you're worried about your bills. Forget about it. Just hang out and enjoy the moment. And when you're paying your bills, forget about everything else. You got to pay your bills to get this done with first, then we'll move on to the next. The other point I want to make is that you didn't really highlight it enough, and because you're a humble guy, but you said you failed. You weren't really a good student, but yet you earned 4 doctorate degrees. So knowing that you weren't able to retain this information, you weren't really good with test taking, you still kept pushing on, and I commend you for that, because there's a lot to learn as a lesson for most folks that aren't good students. Like, just keep going. You're not going to be a brilliant student unless you put the time in. And the last thing I want to mention was that in addition to physical and mental abilities and just excelling in all those directions, another category that I really can give you kudos for is you became a great business person and able to put all this together in all your passion, all your energy, and you put it all and mixed it to create this interesting life. I mean, you have all these things going for you, but you can see clearly how they all connect. There's a bridge for all of them to get where you are right now. If people look a little deeper, they can see that. So I want to just give you a lot of kudos for all that.
Well, I mean, what you do is you get an augmentation. I call it the retrospect prospect game. And you look at what can be, and then you look at, when you finish the project, what it has become. The easiest way to visualize that is in construction. You sort of have an idea. You want to build this building or this big home or whatever the case you want to do. I like building structures because now there's like naked land, there's nothing there. So you have this vision in your brain, what you would like to build. And then as you build it, and then when you finish it, you look back, you go, wow, there was nothing there before. And now look at this gorgeous structure. Same thing with a company. When I would look to sell companies, I would look at, what do I want this company to look like at sale? What do I want this entity to be? And then I build back from there. In other words, I'll build back from the starting point of the company. How do I get to where would I visualize this company to be? And I'm not alone in that thought process. I'm sure Musk and Bezos and a lot of other people think the same way. You think 5 years or 10 years out, what do you want this thing to be? A lot of my drive, though, is what impact can this thing I'm building have on others? That to me has always been very important. That's why I like being a coach. I like coaching the kids to get them to be champion wrestlers. I coach both my kid brothers. They became New York champion wrestlers. In fact, it's pretty funny because I was all city in a few different sports. My coaches go, oh my God, there's 2 more of these coming through the ranks, because my brothers were younger, and the coaches were going crazy. They go, oh my God, they got 2 more like this, who can play football and track and shot put and wrestling. But my brothers could only handle 1 sport, not 4 or 6 like myself. But I was able to coach them to become city champions as well. And so I think that what people need to do is they need to look out, what do they want themselves to be? What do they want their life to be? What do they want this company or companies to be? And then work backward from that goal. What do we want this thing to turn into? And I think that's really the secret. But the key is not giving up. That's where the problem ends up. People give up on themselves. They give up on their goals. They give up on their dreams. That's the biggest mistake. You quit right before you get there.
That is brilliant. Thank you, Dr. Bob. Appreciate you. Dr. Bob, just to round off our story, so at what point did you start to transition into the martial art mega superstars and consolidating this army of the best martial artists in the world? And then if you want to talk about that, also the Hall of Fame speaker, I'm sorry, the Hall of Fame organizations that you put together, especially one with Arnold. Anything else that you want to add to bring us to present?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I started martial arts very young, and reached black belt. I got my 6th Dan black belt in 1986, testing out in Malaysia. And then after 86, I sort of stopped. I just didn't continue. I still worked out with weights and trained, but I didn't do any more martial arts. So now we go to the year 2012. I'm at the Arnold Sports Festival, and I sponsor a lot of events at the Arnold. I even donated the 800-pound Arnold statue to the city of Columbus, which everybody goes and gets their picture taken in front of it, during the Arnold Sports Festival, which is the largest sports festival in the world. Well, at that time, that year I was sponsoring the Highland Games, which guys with the kilts throwing the big heavy balls and all the strength sport. So I sponsored that year. It was the first year I was doing the International Sports Hall of Fame there. And I also sponsored the Arnold Sports Film Festival, which Arnold wanted people to submit. And Arnold goes to me, hey, look, why don't you do a movie on your life? And I said, look, that's kind of egotistical. I don't think I should really do that. He says, no, please, I really want you to do a video on your life. So I do the video, and in there I have some clips of me setting world records with overhead one-arm push-ups and sit-ups and handstand push-ups. So the video is shown at the film festival. Well, at the film festival, Master Alan Goldberg, who started the Atlantic City big mega martial arts event, and Chuck Zito is a movie star and also a black belt martial artist, both of them heavy martial artists. Chuck I kind of knew from TV, but I didn't know him. And so they saw this video and they go, holy, whoa, I can't believe you can do all those strength sports. And then they came to my International Sports Hall of Fame, where I'm inducting Arnold Schwarzenegger and Corey Everson, who's a 7-time Miss Olympia, Mark Henry, the WWE World Champion and the World's Strongest Man, Jack LaLanne's widow, who, Layla LaLanne, who was accepting it for Jack. And so they come to those two events. They go, you got to come to our next martial arts event at Atlantic City, which is, that was the event I met you at. And I had not been to any of these events where they had these martial arts Hall of Fame. So I show up, all of a sudden I'm running to guys I used to fight with back in the old days in Chinatown, and other martial arts colleagues that I knew from Brooklyn way back. We're talking about from 1986 to 2013, because 2012 we had the Arnold, and the next event for Alan was when they had the big mega martial arts event, would be in end of January in 2013. So all of a sudden I'm meeting all these people, and I run into Don the Dragon Wilson, who I'd see occasionally at the Arnold Sports Festival or some other events, but I didn't really know Don. I just knew him as a hello, hey Don, how you doing? Because his manager was also one of our bodybuilding officials, Kenny Castle, who has passed away, who was terrific guy. And then I ran into Cynthia Rothrock, who I didn't really know at the time. And I started meeting all these people who, some of which I had sort of met tangentially, and just got engaged again in the whole martial arts world, and then started sponsoring events and getting back to training, and then starting to study Wing Chun and a few other things under Grandmaster Kwok and a few people, and then started traveling around the world to all of these different martial arts Hall of Fame events, meeting up with these people. And for some odd reason, they sort of pushed me up to the top of the food chain, which I didn't feel was really deserving, because yeah, I may have at one time reached a high level black belt, but I was not I was a world champion strength athlete, but I was not a world champion martial artist. I fought some tournaments, but I was not on a status with Don the Dragon or Cynthia Rothrock or any of these people. Yet, oddly, they started to use me as a like one of the featured attractions at all of these different events. And I've been asked the promoters, I go, why are you doing this? I mean, I'm not a world champion. They go, well, if you're going to be there, they know it's going to be a good event, which I always thought was kind of odd and undeserving. Yet the reason I really love martial arts is because everyone's a teacher. Everyone wants to, in other sports, they covet their knowledge, they hide it, they don't share it with others. Where in martial arts, everybody becomes a teacher. And I've always had great respect. These are amazingly talented people who want to share their talents and get great satisfaction out of sharing their knowledge with others. And that to me is really so key to my respect and regard for the martial arts people. On top of that, they're very modest. If somebody's a real high-level martial artist, they're not going to puff, they're not going to start a fight, they're not going to do any of those things. They're going to be the last one to throw a punch. Even if if I was to get hit, I'd walk away. I'm not going to get engaged in that. It's and when you talk to these people who are highly accomplished, really, Grandmaster Ron Van Cleef, who had been through all kinds of challenging things through his life. I mean, all these amazing people are some of the most giving, gentle pillars. They really have tremendous talent to take somebody out in a second, yet they're the last person who would do that. And so I became very, very engaged. And I'd say I'm way more engaged in the martial arts world than the bodybuilding fitness world or any other sports world, even though I played 10 years of football, trained for the Olympic Games in freestyle wrestling. I'm most involved in the martial arts community because I find them just a remarkable group of individuals and so much fun to be with. And that's why, and the reason I'm on this podcast is because Grandmaster Cynthia Rothrock made the introduction to us, and these are all like family friends now. These are like my, we call it our martial arts family. And it is a family.
So Dr. Bob, just to step back. So there was a period of 25 years up to 2012 from 1986 that you didn't even do martial arts until you ran into this.
No, I would train, but I would train, I really just sort of left it. I just put it on the side. I would still exercise because I thought it was always important to stay in shape. And I like moving heavy weights. I've always liked moving heavy weights. So weight training, I always did all those years, but the martial arts, no, I just cut it. After I reached the level I felt comfortable with, I stopped.
So when you finally when you wound up connecting them in 2012, you built this relationship, and is that what led up to the creation of this Hall of Fame martial arts that you did?
Well, actually, the Hall of Fame is called the International Sports Hall of Fame, and I launched it in 2012, unrelated to the martial arts. I launched it because I thought that you have so many great, iconic, legendary sports people in all different sports who may have been left by the wayside or can still inspire so many others, whether they're NFL Hall of Famer, NBA, baseball, martial artists, or whoever. So every year I would pick 4 to 6 guys, actually 5 to 7 champions in different sports and hold this event, which I would fully sponsor. No one would be charged to come to the event. Food would be provided in the venue, and amazing, these huge gold medallions that were so big that they had to change the Olympia medallions because mine were bigger and heavier. And I did that to inspire the new generation because I felt it was important that this next generation would look at like a Marcus Allen or Arnold Schwarzenegger or Mark Henry or Franco Colombo or Earl of Pearl Monroe or whoever, or Johnny Bench in baseball. These are all Hall of Famers, would be inspired. And even when we had David Goggins, he was great. I mean, what an amazing, inspirational. Tim Kennedy, also an ex-military world champion MMA guy. We've had some really great people. And I started that to honor all sports and honor these legends who could then share their stories of their challenges to get to where they wanted to go and share that story. So that was the reason for starting the International Sports Hall of Fame, which is very different from a lot of the martial arts Hall of Fames that are out there. And I only attend just a few of them a year, and mostly really to see my martial arts friends. And so,
You didn't. Sorry to interrupt.
uh,
You didn't create the Martial Art Hall of Fame. I thought you had something to do with
no,
that too.
no, that I participate in that, but no,
Oh,
mine is called the International Sports Hall of Fame, which honors all sports. And we've had a number of MMA guys in our Hall of Fame as well. But we do great Grandmaster Ernie Reyes Sr. We've had just a Billy Blanks. It's like really great people in my Hall of Fame. Martial artists, NBA Hall of Famers, NFL Hall of Famers. We've had 4 Heisman Trophy winners that we've inducted. I mean, really amazing people. In fact, I'll tell you a cool story. When I put Earl of Pearl Monroe, NBA Hall of Famer, basketball player, it was the same year that the Knicks had won the World Championships, won the NBA World Championships. In fact, that was like 40 years earlier when they had won it. So there I'm with Clyde Frazier. I'm here with the Knicks. I mean, and we went to Wall Street because we were going to all ring the bell together in the anniversary of the 40-year victory of the New York Knicks winning the NBA World Championship. So, I mean, it was like surreal. So we're at Wall Street ringing the bell on the big podium with Earl of Pearl, Clyde Frazier, and a few of the other Knicks. I mean, what an amazing situation to be around. And that was the year that I had inducted Earl of Pearl Monroe into the Hall of Fame. So some really cool stuff had come out of it that I thought was, really just, real kind of groundbreaking to just be part of something like that. And we're walking around Wall Street and on the trading floor, all the traders are going crazy because there's the Knicks walking through the trading floor.
and Cynthia Rothrock was your first martial artist inducted into your International
Yes, yeah,
Sports Hall of Fame.
Cynthia,
Correct.
and then Don the Dragon. We've also inducted Michael Jai White, who's amazing athlete, 8 black belts. I mean, these are all amazing people. I mean, Cynthia, Don, Michael, these are, just phenomenal people. Billy Blanks, great Grandmaster Ernie Reyes, Grandmaster Ron Van Cleef. I mean, these are all just astounding individuals who, were groundbreaking in their own accords. Don was 11-time world champion, kickboxing champion, undefeated. Cynthia was like 7-time world champion. I mean, these are amazing people, truly amazing people.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. Once I've been doing, I was a wrestler like yourself and got involved with martial arts about 10 years after I graduated. So there was a latency period. But when I first was introduced to you guys, like your core group, I felt like I was at home. I felt like this was my tribe because of what you just said. There's this humbleness at that level where people just they're leaders. I don't know how a better word. They think for other people beyond themselves, and even though they're so capable of being egotistical because of the high level of success they've achieved, they put others first, and I really respect that about the group.
Yep. I agree with you, and that's the part. That's why I'm so supportive of this group. I mean, they're amazing people. Unfortunately, a lot of them are terrible business people, and so
maybe that's why they
brilliant.
wanted you so bad in the group, eh?
Right? Yeah, they're brilliant. They're talented. That's why if I'm ever at dinner, I pick up the tab for everybody. I sponsor a number of different things because they really are terrific individuals. And you could see it when the fans come over to them. They'll take a picture with whoever. There's none of this, hand up in their face to the fans. When we're at these Hall of Fame events. I also Benny the Jet Recruites. I also put him in the Hall of Fame. Benny, also another remarkable martial arts, humble guys. I mean, this is really. These are very, very special people who, to this day, they go to these events for the fans, and they're still teaching, and they teach seminars at these events. And it doesn't matter who they are; they give the respect to these young people and try to inspire. And martial arts is one of the few areas where there's still this high level of respect for the elders, the respect for the past champions. A lot of the new NFL, NBA, guys coming up, they have no respect for the people. Maybe for a Michael Jordan or a Kobe or somebody, but for the most part, it's not the same level of mentorship that I've seen in the martial arts. Not that there's none of it.
It's just not the same level. The bulk of the martial arts people out there, Jeff Speakman, another one who, they're just born teachers and they spend their lives teaching. It really is, it's really an honor to be around these kind of people. And so I try to attend events when I can, but Alan's event, the big mega martial arts thing in January, that's hardwired into my calendar every year. I never miss that. Sort of like the Arnold Sports Festival, which I never miss, or the Olympia. Those are the few events that I go to every year, no matter what. And that's going on 35, 40 years.
Wow. And Bob, Dr. Bob, I just want to also say, of course, I'm so honored to have you here, but a bonus to having this interview is that you're the perfect person, the leader of that community that could represent the whole story. So this story of yours is also a story of the martial art community. So I want to give respect to those names that you mentioned as well by carrying on this conversation. So thank you for all that you do for helping, because as a finance guy, I know that you need money. My first book as a professor, The Necessity of Finance, you need money to survive. That's for every organization. So you being that guy that helped carry a lot of the weight for the martial art community, it was instrumental. I mean, how else would you get the word out there if you didn't have someone to support them? So you deserve to be honored in that way. So thank you. I appreciate you.
Well, we also have the Martial Arts History Museum. We have our event coming up beginning of August, and that's another event because I'm one of the large donators to the museum. It's probably the main museum in the world honoring martial arts, and they've got everything. All these, everybody donates. I've donated samurai swords and a whole array of other things, and we all donate things. And there's a lot of things donated from different movies, from that people have donated to the museum. And that, again, a whole array. We have that event beginning of August, and a number of the martial art icons. They all show up. Cynthia will be there. Don the Dragon will be there. I mean, the whole gang shows up for this, and it's great when we all get together. It's like a family. Literally, it's like a family gathering. And when we lose any of our martial arts guys, it's heartbreaking for all of us. We lost Grandmaster Harry Mock, who was almost like a brother to me. We talked every day. A terrible, terrible loss for all of us. So we hosted a celebration of life for him, which I sponsored at the Martial Arts History Museum. And it got one of the biggest crowds you've ever got in the history of the museum.
When's the martial art? Sorry to interrupt you. When's the martial art?
August 5th in Glendale.
And it's near in California.
It's near Burbank. It's the Burbank Airport.
And that's one of the largest martial art museums in the world. Is that right?
Well, they're going to be moving into a much larger facility, but it's one of the more established, and I would say probably the premier martial arts history museum, certainly in America, but maybe in the world. And Michael Matsada that's his life. That's all he does. He donates his time to he lives above the museum. I mean, this is his life is perpetuating the martial arts field, and the history behind it.
Wow. I've got to mark it on my calendar one of these days to get there. This year, I've already booked a retreat for that time that I'm running with a Hall of Fame speaker, but definitely got to make it up. I think Vinny told me about that originally.
Yeah, Vincent Sierra is also another, great martial artist, and Vinny and I, we had a great time about a month ago. It was Vincent Sierra, who was a high level jiu-jitsu, terrific martial artist. Michael J. White, was movie star and amazing martial artist. And so we did, and Chef Rush, you may have seen with the big arms, Chef Rush, who was Andre Rush, who was the White House chef. So we went on the military training at Fort Irwin, and Deontay Wilder, the world boxing champion, heavyweight champion, was also with us on that trip. And we flew out on the attack Black Hawk helicopters, and we're playing with the 50 caliber machine guns, climbing inside the tanks. And we had a whole day of military combat training, breaking the doors down in full armor gear. We had a great time. In fact, I just got a note from another martial arts colleague of mine who wants to, he just invited me to do Delta Force training with a bunch of those lunatics. So I'm not sure if I'm going to do that because it's not 1 day, it's a 3-day. I don't know if I'd survive. So, the Delta Force guys they're pretty extreme. But I have enjoyed the several times I've done the Fort Irwin training. I also years ago went through some special forces training in the Middle East in the Israeli special forces camps. And but I'm going back to the late 80s back then when I did that training.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Appreciate you. So Dr. Bob, if you want to round off the story, anything else you'd like to add to bring us to present? The floor is yours.
I think it's really just the message to the young people out there. We know we're living in a toxic environment, from the food that we eat to the air we breathe to the type of way things get censored to, is a guy or a girl, and all these, just so many insane things are going on politically in every which way. It's really tragic that, so many of us are, split down the middle here. And I think that what we need to do is really focus on bettering ourselves and helping those around us, and helping to bring some harmony and progression and positive thought, and to value your family. I mean, I call my folks every day. My dad's going to be 94 in a week. My mom's 90. If you're fortunate, of all the things I've been lucky about, the thing I feel most fortunate is I still have both my parents. And so I call them every day. It doesn't matter where I am. I'm either on a Zoom with them. I call them every day. So you need, my message to people out there is you got to really value your family. It doesn't matter if you had spats in the past or you didn't agree, they're still your family. And so you got to try and work it out. If you have problems with your brother, your sister, whatever, try and work it out. Put it behind you, because look, in 50 years, nobody's going to care. And when they're gone, that's not the time to honor them and to care about them. The time to care about them is now. So honor your friends, honor your colleagues, try to help those around you to pull up. The more you give, the more you get. And I think that people need to change away from this greedy me, selfie society, of putting their filtered images up all on the internet, and their endorphin high coming from how many likes they get on a Facebook post or this other nonsense. Interact more with the humans in person with people. I'm not saying not to do social media or not to do, all these other things, but balance it out a bit and try and also focus on your health. Jack Lane used to have this coin he would give out. We sacrifice our health for wealth, and then we sacrifice our wealth to get back our health, and all we get is a stone, in other words, a gravestone. I think people need to really change their priorities as to the way they view life, the way they view the people around them, what they're able to do in terms of their personal capacity of what they can do and what they can achieve, to not get frustrated and not get angry. And one of the things that I've done over the last several years is I've become a meditation student of one of the Grand Enlightened Masters in Thailand. And I'm going back again in January and dragging Cynthia and a whole bunch of the people with me. It's very intensive. It's brutal. You're up at 4:30 a.m. Your phones are confiscated for the week. You're not supposed to look at anybody, talk to anybody. It's a high level of meditation. You're living on like little vegetable mush that you eat once in the morning and once in the afternoon, and that's it for the day. You're sitting in a crouched position from 4:30 a.m. till like 9 o'clock at night. It's all internal. It's extremely challenging. There's no air conditioning. You're living in very rudimentary quarters, yet it's a way to really see what's going on inside yourself. It's very challenging. It's hard as hell. One of the toughest things I've ever done, but I got a whole army of our martial arts gang who are going to join me in this January in Bangkok. They're flying out, and after the week of torture, we're going to hold a Grandmasters Martial Arts Hall of Fame event and demo at the Seoul Resort which is attached to the ashram. We're all going to go through our meditation training. In fact, the master is the highest level Buddhist master on the planet, in my opinion. And I was the first foreigner ever to be given the honor of being a meditation instructor as a foreigner for this master. So that's another whole world in its own, in terms of what they do in the world of meditation. But it looks like Benny the Jet is going to be coming. Cynthia, I got a whole army of my martial arts people are going to be joining me on this retreat. So it'll be the first time the course is ever taught in English. It's always been in Thai. So
is that your main thing now that you're focused on, that you really want to accomplish to become great at next meditation?
Well, I mean, it's one of the most difficult things. I still consider myself very much an amateur and a novice. It would be great to eventually reach some level of enlightenment. I'm very, very far from it. I may sometime consider even doing a month of monkhood, which I'm not too crazy about because you have to shave your head and shave your eyebrows, and you're in a little hut in the middle of the
I
jungle.
was a monk before, just to let you know.
Oh, okay, so you know what it's like. It ain't
I'll tell
easy.
you that, yeah, another time.
Yeah, so I'm considering that maybe at some time in the future, but
It's the eyebrow part you gotta get used to. That's the hardest part.
yeah, I'm not, my eyebrows are so light as it is. I don't want them to complete. I had a chance to be in you remember the movie The Warriors? It was a classic.
Oh, you were in the Warriors?
No, I was
Oh.
supposed to be in the Warriors. Both my brothers got to be in the Warriors as extras.
Wow.
I didn't go in because it took me forever to grow my little peach fuzz mustache, and they wanted me to shave it off, and I refused. I was 14. I said, I think I was like 15 years old. I said, I am not. It's taking me so long to get this peach fuzz. I am not shaving this. So I didn't get to be in that classic movie, and
Because
both
of a
my
mustache.
brothers got to be in it. And which is kind of ironic because today I've been executive producer on over a dozen movies. Michael Jai White, I'm the producer for Outlaw Johnny Black. I'm a executive producer on Cynthia Rothrock's new movie, Longevity Hackers, which is coming out this year, maybe on Netflix. I'm not sure where it's going to come out. Because I'm executive producer on that movie as well. So it's kind of funny. I got in the movie business now as an executive producer, and I have little cameos. I'm not an actor, so. In the Outlaw Johnny Black, Michael Jai White's movie, I'm a country doc, and takes a bullet out of a bad guy's leg. So I have one whole line in that movie, but I've had a few little cameos, but I'm not an actor. But I have gotten involved as executive producer for a number of the movies, and that's another whole world in itself, one that I find very interesting. But I only got involved in that really to help my martial arts family people. When they were doing these movies, they needed some support in that area. So that's the only reason I got involved. But that's another whole world. It's kind of interesting.
So, Dr. Bob, before we get to the questions, I just have one last story that I really feel we needed to touch on. And I heard this, you mentioned it today, but I heard it in another interview. It was about the Jack LaLanne experience that you had. I don't know if I heard it right, but was that the moment that really broke you into becoming more popular and opening your doors to a lot of opportunities coming from a broke kid? Like when Jack LaLanne, when you started working with him, excuse me, I think he put he made you the poster board for him, which gave you like 200,000 all over the world or something. Your face was everywhere. Was that it? Was that the moment?
Yeah. Well, we're going back quite a ways.
Yeah, we went back.
Yeah, this is in the 70s, 1970s. They had the Jack LaLanne health clubs. You had European holiday spa. But Jack LaLanne health clubs in the New York and the East Coast area, in Florida, New York, New Jersey. Those were the health clubs everybody worked out at. And I became an instructor at Jack LaLanne's, and they hired me because I broke some of Jack LaLanne's records in terms of handstand push-ups and a few things. So Jack was a mentor and an idol of mine as a kid because I used to watch him as a little kid. And so they ended up using me as their poster child for the big full-page ads in the New York Daily News and the New York Post. And on their big mailers, they had a picture of me holding my hand up, say, take 5, join for 5 weeks for a low amount of money. And so they sent out like 250,000 letters with my picture on it, which was, and then I ended up doing midday live with Bill Boggs, which at the time was the big New York morning show on TV. That was the show everybody used to watch in the New York area. And so they had me demonstrating world records with Jack on the show as well. And I'm of course much younger than Jack, and I didn't just break his world records, I kind of obliterated them. And so you could see he was getting a little, because he was in his early 60s at that time, and I was like, I think I was 19. And he was a little uncomfortable for a moment because here's a kid who had really broken his records. And so Bill Boggs asked me, well, what was your inspiration? I point over at Jack. I go, Jack, I owe it all to him. And then Jack was great. He goes, oh, yeah, that's what we need, kids who want to be a doctor. But that was probably the beginning of a breakout moment of when I was starting to get that kind of attention. But I was still a kid then, I was still, still in college. I didn't even own a car.
with have to borrow my folks' little Pinto to drive to the Jack Lane Health Club to work for $2.40 an hour, vacuuming rugs and wiping down mirrors and making sure nobody killed themselves with a dumbbell. So that was, it was an early start.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. And so that was instrumental, you think, to eventually getting you to the right doors to meet the right people.
Well, that was part of it. And the other part was what Ben and Joe Weider did for me. I had never really traveled anywhere. And in 1985 or 86, I got to go overseas. And that's where I did a lot of my training. And that was because of my work with the sport federations. And so that introduced me to the world of Asia and Europe and so on. And that launched me from meeting ministers of health and ministers of sport and, very influential people from around the world, and got me the traveling bug. And so, I mean, I've been to Bali 60, 70 times, Hong Kong 50 times,
Wow.
Just all around, did lecture tours of Australia through the entire country. So, I also owe a lot to Ben and Joe Weider for also opening those doors internationally for me.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. And lastly, I forgot about your records. Can you quickly summarize your records and also your trophies in the background? Just give us like a quick overview, because you got some amazing stuff back there.
Well, I mean, some of the, I don't know if you remember this, because you may be a bit young for this, but Jack David Frost used to do the Guinness World Book of Records show on TV, where he would have different people breaking different world records for Guinness Book. And they had a guy who had the world records who did 10,000 straight leg sit-ups. I go, wait a second, I could break that record. And so I did 13,500 straight leg sit-ups. We would go opposite elbow to opposing knee. I was the first one to ever to get accepted by Guinness was not easy. Okay, because you had to have it photographed, you had to have a gymnastic coach there, it had to be recorded and published in the newspapers. There were a lot of things you had to do. So I was the first one to ever get a handstand push-up record accepted by Guinness World Book. And I broke that record a number of times. The last time, I think, being 321 consecutive handstand push-ups. And then there were overarm, one-arm push-ups and a whole bunch of other, strength and endurance records that were done over the years. And back in the old days, what Guinness used to give you, they used to give you a little crappy certificate, but they would give you an ugly tie, would have the alpha, omega, biggest, highest, whatever. I have a whole closet full of these ugly ties. So I didn't, but then years later, as world records became more popular, I had different groups who wanted to give me trophies for breaking world records. So that's, some of these monsters that I received over the years. And of course, in the martial arts world, they're always giving you things. And then in the movie industry, they also give different awards. But mostly, I would say a good bulk of my awards were for the world records for a variety of sports. And over the last 10 years in the martial arts world, these various Hall of Fames, which are, which I also value very much because of who they were given by. These were grandmasters, some of which, we've lost Fumio Demera, who, played Mr. Miyagi in the Karate Kid. We've lost some really, Joe Louis, Harry Mock. We've lost so many. Bob Wall, who was in with Bruce Lee and Enter the Dragon. We've lost so many great iconic figures. But we in the martial arts world, we honor these people, and we continue to honor them, and we don't forget them. Where in a lot of other sports, I think they kind of forget pretty quickly. They have short memories, especially the young kids who are now involved. They don't even know who a Ben Weider is or a Jack LaLanne is. Where us in our field, we honor these people. We remember them.
Thank you, Bob. And you want to tell us a little about the trophies behind you? What is all that for? Is that your trophies or?
Yeah, these are from different world. When you hit a certain level, there are different groups that want the exposure, so they want to do an award ceremony for you. And so, you don't want to be disrespectful and say, what the hell am I going to do with this big thing? So because I built all these large homes, my trophy rooms in Chicago and Montana are the size of a normal home. So I have room for all these things. So I just put them out, in my martial arts buddies, when they come to visit, like a bunch of the gang, every year I invite out to my Montana state, I invite out, 4 or 5 of the guys, and we beat the hell out of each other and have a bunch of fun. And
one year I took them up into the mountains where the grizzlies were. I didn't realize there were live grizzlies. We saw a bunch of grizzly dens where we were doing our little martial arts fun. But I always have a friend of mine who carries a bear gun with him just in case we run into a fix. And we had our swords and samurai swords and weapons with us as well. So yeah, so every year I have, and in a few weeks I have another gang coming out. Actually, Vince Sincere will be coming out with a few of the other guys. Grandmaster Mark Gary is coming out. I got a few of the guys coming out. And we're going to go have some fun.
It's incredible. Well, thank you, Dr. Bob. Appreciate you. All right, Dr. Bob, we're going to move into our next segment now, which is our question segment. This is our last segment before we conclude. So I want to thank you for all you've done so far. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Bob. Appreciate you. So basically, I got about 25 questions or so, but they're not really. Some of them aren't really questions. They're just like topics. So, for example, your books. Can you tell us a little about your books, maybe in about a minute or less? I think you got a lot of books.
Yeah, I've published over 50 books. The first one was Death in the Locker Room: Steroids in Sport, when I was trying to make impact in the the drug and sports issues. Then I did the E factor, the ergogenic factor, going about all the performance enhancing aids that are out there. Then I did a whole series of medical books, wrote the first anti-aging book because we came up with the term anti-aging medicine. Myself and Dr. Ron Klatt started the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, A4M. So I wrote a whole array of medical books, and they've been translated into numerous languages. And so then, after the first sports books, the rest of them were really focused on the fields of advanced medical care and medical symposia and anti-aging, longevity, and fitness.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Appreciate you. So, Dr. Bob, next question is about. So I want to thank. I mean, we already met about 5 years ago, but Cynthia Rothrock helped to make this podcast possible. So I want to give a shout out to her. Big fan of Cynthia. And by the way, folks, if you want to watch the interview on Cynthia Rothrock, definitely check it out. It's on the Dr. Finance Live podcast. Just type in the search Cynthia Rothrock and then this interview. I want to give a shout out to her with the question. So can you tell us a little about your connection to Cynthia and also her new movie? I want to give a little promotion to her cool movie she's got coming out. If you want to talk about that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, well, Cynthia is great. I mean, when you see some of the competitive Cynthia's special is her personality, the way that she takes the time to teach them. She's a remarkable teacher and caring teacher. She's a very modest person for all. And she was the first one to go train under in China.
Dr. Bob, sorry to pause for a second. I think you have the red bars there. Okay.
Cynthia Rothrock. I mean,
oh, right, here we are. We're back, folks. We had a little bit of technical issues. Remember, Dr. Bob is out in Montana, so the signal's not the best sometimes. But I want to give a shout out to Cynthia Rothrock, and Dr. Bob was talking about her. Go ahead, Bob. Thank you.
Yeah, and Cynthia is a truly remarkable athlete and person. I mean, she was if you get to watch some of her old championships when she was winning world championships with her katas and fight scenes that she did in her movies. I mean, really amazing stuff. This is an amazing athlete. And she's an extreme athlete. I mean, even to this day, she does all the kind of craziest stuff you can imagine. And, even though she's in her early 60s, I mean, she's got the physical prowess of somebody who's 20 and still so active. She's got Black Creek. It's going to be a new cowboy movie she's coming out with. And she broke the record, I believe, for fundraising on Kickstarter for this movie. It got amazing support. So I'm an executive producer on that movie as well. And she's top shelf. She's my little sister. And we talk all the time. And I'm so proud of her, of what she has been able to do. And she's an extreme athlete. I mean, I feel bad for her boyfriend, Robert Clancy, because he's got to go with the camera, go skydiving around.
skin diving around sharks, jumping out of planes, going. She does a lot of dangerous stuff. And I hope this poor boy survives. He's a nice guy, but
First time I
she's
met her, Dr.
remarkable.
Bob, she was actually climbing up Mount Everest. She just got back from there or something like that.
Yeah, and yeah, she does like, I say, look, just try and get back in one piece. And she's done a lot of, and still does a lot of dangerous stuff. So she's still here. I try and dissuade her from doing the real crazy stuff, but there's no stopping her.
And actually, right after the interview last month, she was climbing up Arches National Monument in Utah. And if you go on her Instagram page, you can see a picture of her on the side of. And folks, Arches is the symbol in the back of the license plate for Utah. That's what she was climbing up.
I believe it.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Bob. Any last words on Cynthia before we move on to the next question?
No, I just said, it really is always great to see how kind she is with her fans and, young students when she's teaching. She is very, very patient, very modest, and a real caring individual with a huge, huge heart. And so that's why she's so well liked and so revered. And that's why they want her. They, as the female martial arts queen of martial arts, as they have on the newest cover of the new Martial Arts Hall of Fame book that's coming out. And rightfully so.
Yeah, and folks, very important too. Definitely check out her new movie that Dr. Bob was mentioning. It's called Black Creek, right, Dr. Bob?
Yeah, Black Creek, yeah.
And her website, if I could remember, I think it's blackcreek.com, something like that. But if you type in Black Creek movie.
Yeah, I'll be flying out. She wrote me recently and said they're going to give me a little cameo in it, even though I'm executive producer. I just want to fly out and see the gang. I'm really not so concerned about being in the movie, but it's always fun to see she's got an army of martial arts people that are in the movie. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. Thank you, Dr. Bob. Appreciate that. All right. So next question, and we're both wrestlers. And we had this conversation a few weeks ago, and I didn't realize this. And you agreed with me that wrestling is actually a martial art, which changes a lot of the dynamics of this conversation. What effect has wrestling had on your success? For me, it's been everything, but I'd love to hear your take.
Well, I mean, wrestling is an individual sport. You're part of a wrestling team, but it's individual. And I think in terms of discipline, endurance, focus. I mean, when you're on that mat, it's you and one other guy. It's a mano kind of situation. And I think wrestling really breeds strong, powerful, disciplined personalities. It shows you that no matter what you have to overcome, you're just going to keep driving through it. Dan Gable was an idol of mine. In fact, I put Dan Gable as, in my mind, the greatest freestyle collegiate wrestler in history.
Gable grip.
I put Dan in the Hall of Fame as well, into my International Sports Hall of Fame. Amazing. Wow. I mean, I remember when he won his gold medal back in the 70s, in between matches, he was working out in between matches at the Olympic Games. Insane. I mean, he just dominated. And I believe in his whole collegiate career, he only lost one match. And when he met that guy again, he decimated that guy.
Did you hear the rest of that story? I mean, I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that one loss that he had, he took it really bad because he didn't know how to lose. Yeah. He was such a good winner. He didn't know how to take loss. I don't know if there's anything to be said about that, but
that really affected him because this is a guy who never lost. I mean, but as great as he was as a wrestler, he was even better as a coach. And he groomed numerous, national and world champions and Olympic medalists.
Would you count wrestling as martial arts?
I would say it is a martial art because, if you look at grappling and MMA, I mean, if you're in MMA these days or UFC or any of these things, if you don't know how to wrestle, you're going to be in trouble. And the grappling is part of it. You can throw the kicks and punches when you're down on the ground, or a good jiu-jitsu guy who knows how to do grappling. You're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I agree 100%. There's so many folks, especially Muay Thai. I've seen some powerful champions. I was trained by an 8-time world Muay Thai champion, but we were just goofing off in the gym one day, and a wrestler grabbed him and put him down just to joke around, and he didn't know what to do. The striking, you have to have a balance of all these to be able to be a great martial artist, right?
That's why I trained originally trained in Shotokan, Japanese, and then Jeet Kune Do, more of a Bruce Lee's style, and then some Mantis Kung Fu, and now with Grandmaster Kwok and Wing Chun. These are all different skill sets, and some of them are almost counterintuitive. Almost feel like like with Wing Chun, you're kind of moving with your legs are turned in, and it's almost like counterintuitive to your standard type of Shotokan or Taekwondo or so on. It's very different. But then when you see like a John Wick, I got to see the stunts in John Wick. My buddy J.J. Perry is one of the top stunt directors in Hollywood. Amazing, amazing guy. This guy has done everything: the Avengers, Batman, Superman, all the Fast and Furious. He's done all the stunts for The Rock. And I got to see the original stunts for John Wick, the original John Wick, at his 8711 gym, like a year or two before the first John Wick. And I'm looking at these stunts and go, holy, how the hell are they doing this? And Keanu, he's the first one in the gym and the last one to live, the last one to leave. That kid's work ethic is amazing. And so he's quite a remarkable, he's a real deal actor who trains, and JJ trained him in weapons and a bunch of the other stuff. And Halle Bailey too, Halle Berry rather, she also trained real hard. I mean, people get hurt doing that stuff, but some of these actors are hardcore, man. They go for it.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. So I'm glad we got that part resolved, because if wrestling is martial arts, then both of us really, our martial art career began much sooner than we said. It began
absolutely
in high school.
Yeah.
We didn't even know it at the time, and you're just thinking of it as a sport. But so thank you, Dr. Bob. Next question I have is about, I want to get into anti-aging. So you're head of a lot of stuff with anti-aging, one of the foremost leaders in the world on this subject. What are the top secrets to living longer?
Well, there are a number of things. I mean, diet is very important. You just need to be reasonable in your approach and what you're doing. Unfortunately, a lot of times people get really lazy in different areas. And so your nutritionist diet, a lot of the foods today are basically poison, or they're just put through so many chemical processes. They're really quite dangerous. So I'm a big fan of nutritional supplementation. I take about 30, 40 pills a day of different vitamins, not drugs, but vitamins. As people get older, say they get into their 40s and 50s, they may need hormone replacement. I'm not for drug abuse, steroid drug abuse in young athletes. I'm very much against that. But as males get to be, again, their 40s and 50s, they may need testosterone, DHEA. Women need estrogen, progesterone. Men develop andropause, just like women develop menopause. And so we need to balance those things out. Also, you got to be very careful when you train. You don't hurt yourself. That's what really sets people back. They get a little crazy. I mean, I don't do any full contact sparring anymore. I'd imagine you do either. It's too dangerous.
No. You
get hurt now, you're screwed. So you got to be careful.
You can't mess with your head. Like, that's what I learned a long time ago. A lot of my teachers from Philly, I grew up in South Philly, that some of them lost their mind, literally.
Yeah.
Because they get hit too much in the head.
Oh, well, the traumatic brain injury is really a bad situation. In boxing, football, a lot of the head spiking that goes on there. That's where a lot of these people, they just have horrible, horrible effects later in life.
So Dr. Bob, why did you even get into anti-aging? I mean, coming from your background, how did you go into that path? Like, what was the rationale for that?
Well, I mean, I've always been involved in sports medicine. Originally, my goal was to be like a team orthopedic or neurosurgeon for one of the pro teams in New York, for the Rangers or the Knicks or the New York Jets or Giants. But as we start to get older, that's why we started the anti-aging field, because we went from NASM, training trainers and certifying trainers, to how do we extend lifespan in a healthy fashion? And as you get older, what do you need to do? Because in medical school, you only get like 10 minutes. When I went to med school anyway, you get like one part of one lecture in biochemistry your first year of medical school. That was it for nutrition. And so doctors really were very deficient in their understanding of nutrition and healthful ways, or even diet and so on. They were just giving drugs. I'm not against pharmaceuticals, but you got to do a lot more to extend lifespan. So we started the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, or A4M, and it grew into, we've trained over 150,000 physicians, and we're, members in 120 countries. So there's an enormous interest, also because of the internet. People read, the patients who come in are educated. They want to know what they're supposed to do. They're not just going to accept blindly what the doctor is saying anymore.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you, Dr. Bob, and well needed. I hope you appreciate the next question. So being a science guy, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Why bother learning anti-aging if we may become cyborgs at some point? Now, let me preface this question. You've got AI, you've got all this insanity stuff happening here. We're basically cyborgs at some point right now. Some people have artificial eyes and hearts, and we walk around with an Android phone all day long, which is now a sixth limb. Like, if this trend continues, like, why even bother learning about it if it may not even apply to humans? And it might sound like a crazy question right at this moment, but I think Elon Musk would probably really hit it right on the spot with that. So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, there's, losing our humanity, I think would be a terrible thing. And AI, I'm not afraid of nuclear wars. I'm more afraid of AI than anything else. I agree with Musk on that. I think that the real danger when if the computers ever started talking to each other and realizing humans destroy things. Humans cause pollution, they blow things up. We cause a lot of problems. So if the computers ever start talking to each other, we're finished. I mean, you're not gonna have to worry about any of the things. But yes, we are moving more towards almost a cyborg-like existence, but that doesn't mean you can't take care of your health. It's not gonna cure everything. And it's a ways away, I think, from humans becoming, becoming like robots. And you wouldn't want to be a robot. And the thing about downloading your consciousness into a computer and that being you, I don't see that happening so quick. I see that's quite a ways away, if ever. Not that it's impossible, nothing is impossible, but it's a kind of scary thought that, we give up all of our humanity to become a cyborg-like individual because someone may just decide to pull the plug a little early on you.
Yeah, and Dr. Bob, I hope you don't mind this question, but my last book, I want to send you a copy of this. It's called The Survival of the Richest. I published in 2016. It was accumulation of all my work. There was a chapter in there called, chapter 37, it's called The Evolution of Evolution. I talked about two different types of selection process, I combined economics, finance, and biology and survivalism together. And evolution of evolution basically says this: there's two forms of selection processes happening in biology right now that we didn't account for, in addition to natural selection. It's monetary selection and technological selection. Technology is creating us through the use of our money. And if you look at the trend throughout time, all the technology eventually it can change everything in life. So you got Elon Musk right now. He's got a company called, I think, Neuralink or something like that.
Neuralink, yeah.
Thing in the back of her head. And if that happens, it ties into what you just said. And that's why I've reserved this question for you, because out of anybody that would really appreciate this and understand how to address it, it would be you. I mean, anti-aging, we're looking at it from a human standpoint. Yeah, we want to live longer, we want to live healthier. But what if it's not even in this body?
Well, I mean, that's why they had the thing where you cut the head off and you put them in a jar and you put it on top of a robot, like like RoboCop and those sorts of things. That's kind of scary stuff. I mean, I understand what Elon Musk is trying to do with Neuralink in terms of implants to help somebody see again or be able to move again, or hitting certain parts of the nervous system or the spinal cord and so on. I understand the positive aspects behind that. But what I'm real concerned about is where people seem to think that they're going to be able to control where this goes. Like that's why Elon Musk said he split with Larry Page, because even though Elon created AI, he's scared as hell of it, and he should be. I think AI, not only is it going to put a lot of people out of work, with the chat GPT, everyone from your screenwriters to your service people on the phone, all this, those professions are gone. They're going to all disappear. It's like bank tellers. You don't have bank tellers anymore. Just like you're seeing in the McDonald's now and the Burger Kings, they have automated this or that. Some of this is pretty scary. You're gonna have what we can call like a leisure class. People stay home, watch TV, plug into their VR and order pizza, which will also be delivered by a robot. some of this, there's some positive aspects, but there are a lot of very negative aspects that I think are going to cause us to lose our humanity. And that will be a really terrible, unfortunate thing. And I think the real danger is being able to control it. The military guys just want their bigger toys and their more dangerous toys. They don't realize those bigger toys are going to kill them also. And Larry Page doesn't realize, they don't realize that they're not going to be able to control it. So they're going to think they're going to unplug it. No, this thing's going to hook up into a satellite and get its own power. And it's going to look around at what humans do. I mean, if you see some of the little things they have on YouTube or whatever, where they ask a robot, well, what do you think of humans? Well, I just want to get rid of them. They just blow things up. They make things dirty. They excrete poisons, and they're destructive. We just get rid of them. And the day the computers start speaking to each other, they're going to realize not only do they don't need us, they don't want us.
Yeah, and if you take it one step further, I heard a recent interview with Elon. One of his biggest concerns right now is who's taken over him, like afterwards. Because see, Elon might have the greatest intentions. I don't know. I'm not in his head, but let's assume yes. Who takes over if Elon dies or is injured or is incapacitated for his company that he's running, which might run this AI, right? And what about all the other companies that now have this AI? What happens when the good leaders are not there anymore? There's always going to be that unethical business person trying to take over for their intentions only. The agency problem.
No, this thing will get out of control. I don't have a lot of faith in humans making the best choices. You can see that all around us every day with the way things are transpiring. I'm not even worried about Elon's company or him being replaced, but there's enough companies out there. All you need is one maniac with a red button and it's game over. And I think that's a real concern, but it's above our pay grade. There's nothing we could do about it. Once it takes on a life of its own, as it is now, and you see how quickly it went from ChatGPT to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. I mean, this thing's going to spiral so quickly out of control. People are going to wake up one day where they're not going to wake up one day. It's not going to be like the movie Terminator. The day the computers lock up and start thinking for themselves, it's not going to be years. It's going to be hours or minutes, till it's game over.
Yeah. Yeah, we can probably have an entire discussion with this, Dr. Bob. We're thinking very similar. I want to turn this on a positive note, though. So last week we had a guy, Dr. Delatorro McNeal. I don't know if you ever heard of Les Brown. He's one of the top motivational speakers in the world. This is his protege. So Dr. Delatorro McNeal followed this podcast episode. He just came on my stage last Friday. Very brilliant speaker, and very well thought out man. We brought up a concept called 3D living, and basically it's like this. Most people think about living long. How long did you live? 100 years, 20 years. But really, you should be thinking about how wide you lived and how deep you lived. Just like 3D, length, width, and depth. And when you put it like that, basically what he's trying to say is, it doesn't matter how long you live. You lived 100 years, but most of the people in humanity that were really great, a lot of great folks in humanity died before the age of 40 that lived much longer, wider, and deeper. So, for example,
look what Elvis did in 41 years.
That's right.
It's unbelievable.
Jesus, he named like a whole bunch of names. Bruce Lee, you name it, right? So my question for you is, this concept called 3D living. What are your thoughts on this concept of 3D living, where basically, and you're anti-aging guy, what if like you don't need to live to 100? Let's say you just lived to 40 and you had a much more impactful life in 40. Where does that relate to anti-aging and all the other things you're doing?
Well, it's very simple. Ask a guy who wants to live to 98. Ask him at 97. Okay. All right. I mean, it's very, in theory, yeah, it sounds great, people, but when they say, hey, look, we're ready to punch your ticket, they don't want to go. So whether they're 40, whether they're 50, even when Elvis was, died on the toilet at 41, if he could have had another 10 years, or Michael Jackson or whoever, they didn't want to die. They wanted to keep going. It was just some unfortunate incident that occurred. But yes, there are some people who put in like 10 lifetimes into a few decades. They do amazing things. They may die, but it doesn't mean that. Look, think if an Einstein could have lived, or a David Hawkins, or some of these people could have lived another 10, 20 years, what they could have created, what could have happened from them. Think if somebody like Elon Musk can get that extra 10 years, what more things would he create? So yeah, even though they're living wide and long and hard and in 3D and so on, think of what else they could have achieved. If I had got killed in the ghetto or early on, there would be no NASM, there would be no A4M.
Yeah, and just to flip it from the other discussion, another analogy you made is some people would you rather live 100 years of impactful life or one year 100 times? So the reason he's saying that is that some people, like, they'll sit on a stoop, right, in New York, and you know a lot of folks from back home that did. My dad used to warn me about this when I was a kid. He said, you see some of these folks, you're going to come back 30, 40 years from now, they're still going to be sitting on the same step. And here I am, I'm looking at what he said, and he's like, see, I told you. And it's true. They live the same life every year. And Les Brown, his famous saying is, most people die at 25, but they're not buried till they're 70. So let's flip this conversation from that angle. What do you think?
Oh yeah, well, I have a great example. One of Arnold's mentors, almost like a father figure, was a guy by the name of Jim Lorimer. He started the Arnold Sports Festival with Arnold. And every year it was very close for Jim. Jim just recently passed away. And when Jim was 90, I said, what can you tell me about? I mean, this is amazing. All the things. He was an FBI agent. He was one of the top vice presidents at National Insurance. He was a top Olympic coach. The guy had so many different lifetimes all in one. So at the age of 90, I said, what could you tell me? I mean, what advice could you give me? What's been the greatest time of your life? He said, the last 25 years doing the Arnold Sports Festival. I said, you mean your life really didn't start till you were 65? He goes, yeah, that's been the best part of my life from 65 to 90. Okay, so when I was at my high school reunion, and all the people are like 65, and many of them have been divorced several times, their health is lousy, they're down on themselves. Many of them, they figure their life is over. And in front of the whole crowd, I said, look, here's a guy, his life didn't even start till he was 65. And it really inspired a number of the people to say, you know what, I can still do more. There's still more I can do. And myself now, I'm still just getting started on a number of different exciting things I want to do. I'm not working the 20-hour days anymore, and I'm enjoying a few other things along the way, but I'm still going at it. I'm still trying to make contributions. I'm still doing the Hall of Fame, inducting these remarkable legends. I'm still trying to spread the interesting information, data out there, and educating doctors, and still trying to do these things. But, a lot of times people think their life is over when they retire at 65. That's it. I'm going to go play golf or sit on the stoop from 30 years on, or work for the Department of Sanitation. This is all I do. That's why retirement for people like us, it doesn't exist. I mean, you just go on and do other creative things.
Absolutely. Brilliant response, Dr. Bob. Appreciate you. Dr. Bob, switching up on another gear, what is Arnold Schwarzenegger like in real life? You got to know him personally for 40 plus years, I believe. So
Arnold is one of the true remarkable humans on the planet. I mean, there's nothing this guy can't do. His level of focus, intensity, accomplishment, he's like a machine. He's like the Terminator, really, in real life. What he is able to do is really just truly remarkable. Anything he wants to achieve. There was just a recent series that he did on Netflix, and if you haven't seen it, you should go see it. It's a 3-part series, and I know the bulk of everybody in it, because I know Arnold so long. He also has like a didactic memory. He'll walk into a room, and he feeds on crowds. It's really amazing to watch him work a room. I mean, he works a room unlike anybody I've ever met. And his level of charisma it's staggering. When he was head of the President's Council on Sport, I mean, he'll walk in a room, there'll be senators, congressmen, CEOs of major corporations. Around him, they become like little kids. They become like little fans. I mean, it's really amazing to see. And he's very good at throwing people off balance. Like, he'll grab your oblique and he'll say, hey, you haven't been working out, you look a little fat. He's just really good at throwing, even if you're in the best shape of your life, he'll still throw you off. When I put him in one of the Hall of Fames, He goes in front of the whole crowd and there's like all these world champions. He looks at me and he goes, you know, looking at you, I wouldn't think you could do anything. When I saw that video of you doing those world
I
records,
heard
he said,
that.
I couldn't believe it. I said, you don't look like anything. You know, he's really good at doing that, but he's got a great sense of humor. And he'll walk in a room, not seeing people for 20 years, and he'll remember everyone's name. So he's really true. He's one of the historically remarkable individuals that I've been fortunate to be mentored by and to have as a friend for over 40 years. So just off the charts.
And tying it back to our previous conversation, if that inevitable or hopefully never will happen event happens, then at least you're friends with the guy that was the Terminator.
Yeah, I mean, you know, listen, we all, you know, he had a few close calls with his cardiac issues and the valve issue and so on. One of the things that he is good at, he knows how to enjoy himself. He knows how to bring joy in the different activities, but it's also kind of rough being him because he can't go anywhere. I remember he came to Chicago, visited my Chicago mansion. We went out to dinner at the Palm restaurant. He invited me out to dinner. And when I go to the Palm, they have like the celebrities' pictures on the walls. And when I walked in, I didn't see his picture. And I go to the maitre d', I go, you know, Arnold's gonna be pissed off that he doesn't see his picture up here. And the maitre d' goes, he won't even notice. As soon as Arnold came in, he goes, that is my picture. First thing he said to the maitre d'. And we're sitting down and having dinner, and the guy says, you want a private room? Arnold goes, no, we'll sit in the room right over there. And, you know, when you're the most recognized person on the planet, there's no escape. You can't go out, you can't be I mean, I can go anywhere, nobody cares who I am. They don't know who I am. And the same thing when I was with Jason Statham, you know, Jason's a good friend of mine too. And again, very recognizable celebrity, you know, A-lister. You know, I was visiting with him in Bangkok and we were having dinner, Christmas dinner together in the Kempinski Hotel. And we couldn't even have dinner because people just kept coming over. They wanted to get a photograph. Your life is not your own. So, you know, everybody goes, I want to be a star. You know, I want to you don't want that. It ain't fun. You know, there are parts of it that are kind of fun, but really you're a prisoner of the world. You can't go anywhere. I can go around like here in Montana or even in Chicago. Nobody knows who I am. It's easy. It's simple. Your life is easy. When you're an Arnold, you can't go anywhere.
But how does he feel about it? He still wants the limelight. He's still
No,
there.
I mean, listen, he's a star.
If he don't want to, he would leave, right?
Well, even if, you know, at this stage, it'd be a little hard to leave. But no, some people he feeds off of crowds. So for him, it's fine. Mm. Jason gets a little uptight when there are too many people around. Mm-hmm. So we kind of like shielded him from them because they're just people wouldn't leave him alone.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob, how does a local influencer step onto a world stage? So to preface this question, you started from just a regular person from Brooklyn. You're on a world stage now. I mean, you've got like connections to everyone. I've seen you with presidents of every country you could think of. I mean, how do you get to that point where you're now playing a much different game? It's beyond A-listers. This is like global at this point.
I'll tell you a funny story. That's a true story, but crazy. When I was 17, I was working as a lifeguard at the Brickman Hotel up in the Catskills in New York. I was just a little poor kid. And there was a French movie producer who came with his daughters, who was a friend of one of the performers in the nightclub. The nightclub we had there, you know, they have live acts and so on. And everybody from Gregory Hines to Frank Sinatra to Jackie Mason would play, you know, in the nightclub there. And so this performer, this French movie producer was his friend. And the guy comes with his daughters. And of course, I'm interested because I'm a little 17-year-old kid with these pretty girls. So I want to go over and say hello to them. And this French movie producer, he meets me and he goes, I want to hire you for a company. And I'm going, what? You know, I'm just some poor kid from a poor neighborhood. What does he want to hire? And he wanted to hire me for a company called SOS. And this was a group, he was traveling somewhere overseas and he needed medical care. And he developed a company where they would send a special rescue plane into anywhere in the world to rescue somebody and give them the medical attention with nurses on board, surgical unit, the whole thing. And this is when he was first starting the company. I would have been employee number one, like employee number one at Microsoft or employee number one at Facebook or employee number one at Oracle. Okay, this guy wanted to hire me. So my parents said, no way, you traveling around the world with something you've never really been out of Brooklyn. We're not letting you, you know, take this job and fly around. Now go 35 years into the future. I'm in Saint-Tropez on my friend's yacht, and I'm with
Ivana Trump and Denise Rich, who won a few $1 billion from her ex-husband, all these VIPs. And I'm waiting for them to send the car to bring me back to the yacht. And I'm at the waiting area at this restaurant, this fancy restaurant. And there's this older woman in her late 70s. And we just start chatting up. Oh, you're from New York? Oh, I'm from New York too. I say, hey, you want to go on the yacht? I'll get you invited on one of these mega yachts, at the billionaire guy's house that I was staying on. And so the next day we're on the yacht and I say, where do you live? She goes, oh, I live on Central Park West. I go, when I was 17 years old, there was a friend of mine who was one of the guys who worked in the nightclub, and he had this really nice apartment I went to on Central Park West, which I had to take 3 trains into the city to go to, by the way. And I go, he knew a French movie producer. She goes, you mean Jean-Claude Van, whatever his name was? I go, yeah. She goes, you gray hair, about 5'6" beard. I go, yeah, that was the guy. He wanted to hire me for some company called SOS. She goes, yeah, he sold that company for like $1 gazillion. He's sailing around the world on his super yacht, super sales boat. I would have been employee number 1 in that company. Okay. So she says, well, he's got a babysitter for his apartment, like a house sitter for his apartment. And so she goes to the house sitter. It turns out the house sitter didn't own the apartment. It was my friend who was a performer in the nightclub, who was the house sitter, whose party I went to, who I thought it was his apartment. And after 35 years, I call the guy, I go, Johnny, I got to ask you, why did Jean-Claude want to hire me for this company, for SOS? He goes, we spoke about it. And he said, this kid's going to be big one day. I want to hire him. Then the next week, he gets a hold of him on a super yacht somewhere in the Caribbean. And he talks to Jean-Claude, and tells Jean-Claude about where I'm at right now. And Jean-Claude goes, you see, I know how to pick him. True story, crazy, decades apart. And it's who you meet. The reason I say this story is you never know who you're going to meet that will lead you to one thing to another. So the toes you step on today could be connected to the ass you got to kiss tomorrow. Be nice to people, be respectful. You can always tell how somebody is by how they treat waiters or busboys or doormen or whatever. You treat everyone with respect. The people who do the whole, you know who I am, and are disrespectful or nasty to people, they're making a mistake. You never know who knows who will come back with a positive or negative influence. Be kind to people, not necessarily for what you're going to get, but be kind and modest around people. Don't be looked down on others. You never know that doorman may be the doorman for the Rockefellers or whatever. I remember I was at, there's a conference called the BOA conference. It's the most powerful conference in Asia. And I used to get invited there to run some of the seminars. You get the heads of like 25 of the ASEAN countries. So I'm sitting up in the front with the VIPs. And so Bill Gates is like two rows in front of me. The mayor of Chicago is to the left of me. There's an elderly woman next to me, and George Soros is sitting another chair over. So I just step over to say hello, and I'm talking to the older woman, and then the Chinese who had invited me to this, he said, the woman you were sitting next to that you were speaking to? I go, yeah, nice old lady. That was Mrs. Rockefeller. Okay, all right, so you never know who you're sitting to on a plane, train, or whatever, or who the doorman may be, or who the restaurant waiter or waitress may be. You gotta be, if you're an influencer or you're somebody who wants to go, never be a puffy, show-offy, condescending person. Be nice to people, be respectful of people. It doesn't matter if they're a bum on the street or whatever. If they're not trying to hurt you, be nice to them. You never know who's going to know who and whose ass you're going to have to kiss in the future. So don't step on their toes.
So Dr. Bob, any way you looked at it, you were destined for this level of success. If you would have worked for that guy, you would have just had success in a different way. It might not have been all these trophies and things like that, but it could have been a different and better in a different way. Who knows, right?
No, my path could have been different in a lot of ways. I mean, there was a company back. I could have been a co-owner of Mother Nature of Amazon. Before Amazon, there was a company called mothernature.com that was selling online vitamins and books. Sound familiar? This is before Amazon existed. This company raised $50 million back in the early 80s, even before there was an Amazon. And the guy who started the company, he brought me in. I owned 20% of what would have been Amazon. Okay, they raised 50 million, which would be like raising, like hundreds and hundreds of millions today. Unfortunately, they made the mistake of hiring a Harvard MBA who was having affairs with the staff in the office while his pregnant wife was home with 2 kids. They blew through the 50 million. Company went belly up, was gone. So I could have been a co-owner of Amazon, which would have changed. I wouldn't have created NASM. I wouldn't have created the A4M. There are a lot of things that never would have happened because I would have made so much money on that. I wouldn't have been seeking these other things. On top of that, there were other opportunities that could have happened where this whole CBD industry, with CBD, I met the guy who had all the original patents with CBDs, who had the original companies, but he got killed in a car crash, so he never got to finish out that company. So, your life could go in so many different directions you don't know. But the only advice I could really give is do not be condescending or cruel to others because you think their position is lower. I don't care if they're a garbage man. I don't care if they're a doorman, if they're a waitress, a busboy, you be respectful to them. Do not walk into that room and be unkind to people. I think that's a big mistake.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bob. Appreciate it. Dr. Bob, next question, which I think you'll appreciate, ties right into this. So you're talking about stepping on a big stage and in the world and meeting all these big folks. But going back to what you said, you could have 2 different paths, right? So if you took that one path, you might not have been all this because you might have already had the money, right?
Right.
The big problem that I see, and I'm sure you're going to appreciate this conversation, the concept of spoiling. So when people have too much, they tend not to do things. Kids have too much, they're spoiled, they don't do anything. They may waste their life because they don't need to be pressured. They don't have enough struggles induced in their life to really create a quality life that would make them independent. So what's the fine balance? If our struggles help to shape us, how do we ensure that we and our children maintain healthy amounts of obstacles when we reach the highest levels of success? So I mentioned one of the things that make me, I'll come back to the question, I know it's a mouthful. One of the things that made me, my concepts that I created, which was unique, is that in my first book, The Necessity of Finance, the concept of struggling kept coming up. I wrote this over 10 years ago. And I started realizing, I wrote this book for my students as a finance book. Why am I talking about struggling so much? What is it? My martial art background, my upbringing. But then as I kept progressing through my books, the struggle kept coming through it again. And on every one of these covers, you'll see a quote that I have about the struggle. The last book, I decided to deep dive into this, and I wrote one of the longest overviews of survivalism that ever existed, and it tied to finance. And my subject of finance, the way I see it, which is unique, is finance is an extension of survival. So the reason I'm going through all this is because when you break down the definitions of survival and struggle, the struggle is incorporated into the definition. So if we need these struggles, if struggles is what made you, which made I, right, made us, right? If we need them, we're separated from those that are spoiled because they're deprived of the struggles. So how do we balance this out so that when we reach these levels of success, like where you're at right now, so that we don't just sit on our laurels and we have an open door for more opportunity of growth? Because if you have money, you can eliminate almost all your struggles, except for a new class of struggles will happen. Of course, they call it a glass ceiling, but how do we leave an open door for our continued growth when we reach these levels of success? And your answer to this question might also answer how to avoid spoiled kids from being spoiled in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what your wiring is. Even if I had been successful in some of these other ventures, like being employee one at SOS or having helped to create Amazon, I probably would have got more involved in my charitable work. So I wouldn't have created the same thing, but I would have still wanted to create other things. Best way to sum it up, when I was sitting with Ben Weider after we're in Poland at the World Championship, and he just sold his company for like the equipment division for like $100 million.
I said, Ben, how's it feel? You're getting ready to get the Iron Cross, which is the highest award of the Polish government. I'm sitting next to him in their parliament building. And I said, how's this feel? I mean, you just sold your company for $100 million. I go, what are you going to do? He goes, tomorrow I'm getting up and I'm going right back to work again. So it's very profound, thing, having people like that for mentors, even though they had made a lot of money early on or later on, they were still doing the things they felt that gave them passion. So even if I had been fortunate enough, or others were fortunate enough to, come into a lot of money early on, the struggling and the sacrifice are really. Let me just get this plugged in 1 second.
Oh, okay. Take your time.
Hold on. I'm going to come right back to you.
Okay. We're back. Thank you, Doctor. We're here with Dr. Bob Goldman, and he's telling us a very interesting story on a very long question. Sorry about that. It was just, I don't know how else to ask it. I thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, we all have the struggles help, but it depends how somebody is wired. Some people, like, I remember there was a friend of mine from high school that he was able to retire. He was an accountant. He retired at 45, and all he did for the rest of his life was play golf. What a waste. What an absolute waste of a life. When you could be giving things back, you could be mentoring others, you could be creating things that change the world. So a lot of it, people, their whole basis is all about money, how much money, and how many holidays I can take, and how many clothes I could buy, what parties I could go to. I mean, that's the way they're wired, and there's no changing that. But there are a lot of people who are really passionate about changing the world in a positive way, or changing other people's lives around them. And those that are wired that way, even if they come into a lot of money, they will change. But I think it's a real danger if you have a young kid who comes into a boatload of money early on, then they, anything they want, they can get. So they to get a thrill, they start doing drugs or doing all these terrible things. Like one of my childhood friends was Lloyd Blankfein, Chairman, CEO of Goldman Sachs. Lloyd and I were lifeguards together, and he became the most powerful banker in the world. And I say, so, what's it like now? He's a billionaire, and he says, well, I'm only as happy as my least happy child. And so, and many people can have great success, but they have miserable family lives or miserable relationships with their children or their parents or their siblings or whatever. And this is such a tragedy. So if somebody's focus is just money, then the money will spoil them and will ruin them. But if their focus is in creating or giving joy back to the world, then the money will help to enhance. Now that I have, money, I can do a lot of charitable things, which I do all the time, which I was doing even before I had strong financial wherewithal. So it really comes down to a personal choice. Some people, they just want to party and do drugs. I don't do any of those things. I don't go to the nightclubs. I never had interest in that. But different people are wired different ways. So some athletes that they just want to go to the nightclubs and behind the velvet rope and do their champagne thing and all that other nonsense. And others want to go out there and start charitable foundations and make some changes in the world and help the new kids coming up through the ranks. So, it's a personal choice. But a lot of money for a young kid is very dangerous if they're not stable.
Yeah, and Dr. Bob, just to add to this real quick, like even myself, I'm sure maybe yourself as well. When there was a period I went through, I lost my best friend at 18, and I was lost for about 2-3 years, but a whole bunch of crazy stuff happened in my life before I really got it. But if I had money at that time, I would not be alive. I'm 100% confident of it. I mean, the things that I would have done with that money would have just been the end of my life, for sure. And I'm sure there's a lot of people. So this really brings the conversation back into full circle. It's also, if you have the money and you start seeing, you got to invest into your children and your family and make sure that they don't go that path. It's going to take a lot of time commitment to
it's time. The
right?
big problem is, the mother's working, the father's working, they have no time for the kids, or they don't care. And the kids, they go off the rails. That's where, like, two parent, having a mom and a dad, I was very fortunate, to have my parents. They were very engaged, even though my dad had to work very, very hard. The family was still number one. And I think today the family unit is being destroyed from so many different angles. It's, you can't even count them anymore. The value of the family unit. And if you look at all great societies, they all go through the same destructive period. Most great societies last for 200 to 270 years. The Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, and now America. We're going, you start getting all the sexual perversions, and you start getting the destruction of the family unit, and all these things happen. And that's what we're going through right now. We're at about 250 years, so we're in the period of going down the tube. This is just something that happens, unfortunately, and now it's happening to us. I have to put you on hold and say, if I don't turn off my alarm, it'll keep popping in on us.
Okay.
Let me just.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Bob. Appreciate you. All right. So maybe in 30 seconds, can you tell us about, I'm sorry, how has being around the greatest martial artists on the planet improved your skill sets?
Well, it improved my skill sets, not only in martial arts, because we do a little training together. It's their focus and their modesty and the way that they treat others, and always reminds someone to take the time to help others. So it's just a great group to be around, and they feed off of each other in terms of seeing their students become teachers themselves. It's great when you're a black belt and then you graduate black belts. It's a great honor.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Bob. Appreciate you. What are the best tips on getting media exposure? And the reason I'm asking this question, because some of your organizations that you've created, I don't know if this was directly or indirectly, but you've figured out how to get media to some of these events that are just mind-blowing, and you've done it in such an efficient manner.
Well, I think it's a matter, if you want media exposure, you got to do follow-up, and you have to be willing to put the time in. Sometimes you're going to have to make 10, 20 calls or 20, 30 contacts. It's like anything in any kind of project or anything you want to be successful at. You can't give up. If you got to be really persistent. I'll tell you a quickie story. My buddy Steve Schussler started Rainforest Cafe, they're built all over the country.
Yeah.
And he wanted to, early on in his career, he wanted to get a job as a marketing person for this radio station locally, and this newspaper. And they didn't want to hire him. The owner, wouldn't even give him a moment's notice, wouldn't even allow him. So what did he do? He dressed up in a Superman costume, had himself put into a wood crate with a salami sandwich and a Coca-Cola, a can of Coca-Cola. And he had two police bring him in this box over to the offices. And it turned out, though, that the boss was at a board meeting off-site. So he's saying, oh my God, the soda exploded, the salami sandwich went sour, he's filled with Coca-Cola all over his Superman outfit, and he forgot to put holes in the box. So he's ready, he says, I'm gonna suffocate to death before I can get to see these guys. And fortunately, they said that it was a delivery from Mexico of some furniture, and the chairman of the sales organization said, I didn't order no damn furniture. So he goes to the office with all of his board members, and thank goodness Steve gets to pop out of the box before he's suffocated to death in his Superman outfit. And he goes, my name is Steve Schussler. I'm the greatest salesperson you ever meet. You got to hire him. The guy says, you are the sickest person I've ever met. You're hired. Sometimes you got to be a little innovative, or you got to be unrelenting. And Steve's success, I think, is in the restaurant business. He's built at Disney T-Rex and Rainforest Cafe and the Boathouse. All these great. It's his ability to never stop, never give up. And I think if somebody wants to get that media exposure, you got to work the extra hours. You got to put in the extra time. You got to make the call 10, 20 times in a row to make it happen. Nobody's going to hand it to you.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And be creative, right? Like that.
You got to be creative. Well, how much more creative you can be with a salami sandwich, locking yourself in a box, being delivered by two off-duty policemen, and not suffocating to death, and being covered with Coca-Cola and salami before you died.
Good thing that didn't go south. That would have been really bad for a lot of people.
That would have been very unfortunate. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Bob. All right. Gleaming from the knowledge you gained, but you interviewed a lot of the top athletes. So can you rank 3 qualities that made them great from all the different athletes that you've interviewed? Can you rank maybe 20, 30 seconds?
Never being afraid to fail, never letting failure stop you, never giving up, putting in the time, having the work ethic, willing to sacrifice whatever you got to in terms of your personal time and efforts to go where you got to go. But the main thing is the persistence, overcoming the resistance, and keeping the focus and allowing yourself to never letting that goal out of you. You want that gold medal, keep working till you get it. If you got to go back to another Olympic Games and do it again, do it again. Whether if you're in business, the company didn't make it, you go back and you do it again. You just keep going back again and again.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. And to make it further that question on a different angle, you also have a lot of knowledge about survivalism, even though you may not know it, indirectly or indirectly, because you work with some of the biggest, some of the most popular folks out there, martial artists, and you're doing all this stuff with Delta Force. These guys, they take survivalism very seriously. What are rank the top 3 qualities of a great survivor? What do you think are the best qualities to make someone considered a great survivor? Maybe top 3, if you can rank it 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay to have fear, but you got to use that fear as your strength and not make stupid mistakes. You really need to, planning, I think, is one of the biggies. Preparation. Put in the time, do the preparation, figure it out. A lot of people just throw stuff at the wall and pray that it works. So I think preparation is one thing. Hard work ethic. Work, overwork everyone around you. And 3, never, ever, ever give up. If this is your dream, if this is what you want to achieve, you do not stop until you get there. But you also have to know when you let things go. If something's just not going to work, you got to switch gear. And the thing you thought you wanted really wasn't the right thing. You got fired from that job that you thought was your dream job, and you went out and you started your own company because you got fired from that job, and all of a sudden now you've hit your mark.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Dr.
Don't know.
Brilliant lesson. Thank you, Dr. Bob. All right, so Dr. Bob, we're moving into the next segment. These are questions that I've asked to everyone on the show so far. They're standardized questions. They're very quick though. They're like rapid fire, 10, 20 seconds each. So first one is, can one book change the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of books, there are a lot of books in sales and so on, or in inspiration, or in, absolutely one book can change the world.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. What role has networking played in your life? Now, you've already kind of answered some of these questions throughout, but if you can maybe just make it concise.
Networking, it's not what you know, it's who you know, and how you present yourself and how you're perceived by others. Networking is critical, whether it be virtual or otherwise. Networking is probably number 1, 2, and 3.
Would you say that networking is really what helped you to get this far? Like without, like, let's say Michael Jackson, the next Michael Jackson, stand on the corner right now. No one knows him. They just hear his voice. Will this guy ever become the real Michael Jackson if someone doesn't help him get over the bridge?
Yeah, no, you got to have people, you got to have mentors, you got people who open the doors, who you happen to run into by chance or by design. Networking is critical.
Thank you, Dr. Bob.
Put in the time, though. You got to put in the time.
And speaking of mentoring, is mentoring important? And who are some of your mentors?
Well, absolutely. As I mentioned, my mentors, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jack LaLanne, Joe and Ben Weider, Reg Park. These are, all great mentors of mine over the years.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. And I don't know if you really read a lot of these books. I'm sure you read them a little bit, but what are your favorite financial books? Now, when I say finance, I'm including business, I'm including money, investing.
It's funny. I've never taken a business course in my life, and I don't read any finance books. In fact, I met Tony Robbins at one of the events, and we had a nice chat. Really remarkable individual. I get a call the next day from his office saying, "We'd like to put you on in Tony's video on how his videos have changed your life." I go, "Look, I really like Tony. He's amazing, but I never listened to a single one of his videos."
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, his last book, he went into finance a little bit. It's called Money Mastery or something like that. And he interviewed some of the richest guys on the planet.
Yeah, no, he said, look, he's a remarkable guy, done some amazing stuff. I've never listened to any of his videos. I've heard a few clips, but I have not gotten any, I've not read really any business books or finance books or any of them. I've never bothered with them. I did it just by doing business and learning. All self-taught.
I find that super amazing being from where I'm at, running through the course of academia. Well, have you ever read Think and Grow Rich?
Not really. I know the book
You know
is,
about it though, right?
yeah, of course, but I've never
Okay.
read it. No,
Because a lot of the
I've
things you
never
talk
read a
about,
single business. Unfortunately, I could say I've never read a single business book.
that's incredible. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
I've never taken a business course either.
Wow. All right, you're proving a lot of my theories wrong, man.
Well, no, look, for most people, I
Yeah,
think that it is important for the bulk of like 99% of the population.
yeah.
They should read these books. They should learn these things. They should, but I just never did.
But we could also say that you got a lot of knowledge from your mentors, going back to the other question, who at some point probably did read, some kind of business book or learned it
Yeah.
somehow. And also you don't have to learn finance. You can learn it the hard way. Learning a science, any kind of science, just gets you there faster, right? Because you're learning from the mistakes of the people who wrote these books.
Well, I learned I learned it through talking to mentors. That was my education.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Appreciate you. All right. So, Dr. Bob, do we need money to survive? Maybe 10 seconds.
Well, yeah, well, otherwise you're going to starve. Money is a great tool to relieve stress and allow you to do things that you need to do. Otherwise, you're going to spend all of your waking hours worrying how you're going to pay your bills, and you can't think. When you're under that pressure, it just destroys your ability to function. So money pressures are really horrible. I had them a good bulk of my growing up years, and that's why I worked so many jobs. But that's why I had a real hard time in medical school, because I didn't have the time to study. So my grades suffered because I had to work jobs. All the other kids, their daddies were doctors. They lived in nice apartments. They had plenty of food to buy. I was living on $10 a week for food.
So it might sound like a silly question to many folks, but what's common sense is not always common practice. So Dr. Bob, speaking from experience, because he experienced poverty, and like he said, that was a perfect example, by the way, Dr. Bob. If you could eliminate a lot of those obstacles by having money, and you could have expedited your learning process, you probably would have had higher grades. But you got the struggle. Like, the struggle was invaluable. There was lessons built into it. So
Yep.
thank you, Dr. Bob. Appreciate you. And that leads to the next question: is finance necessary for everyone? Now, when I say finance, I'm talking about the science of finance, the science of learning about money and wealth and all that stuff. Would you say everyone should learn about how to manage their money and
Absolutely.
finance?
Making the money is one thing, keeping it is another. Okay, so yeah, I mean, a knowledge of finance and how to invest and what to invest in, when to exit a deal. One of my first major deals, which is, tens and tens of millions of dollars. It was in 06, and I sold a portion of one of my companies. And my business partner said, if we wait another year, our EBITDA will be higher and we can get a bunch more money. I go, no, this is a fair price. This is a good price. This is the right company to do with. We're doing the deal. We did the deal. What happened in 07, 08? The whole market crashed. There would have been nothing.
Oh,
We would have been done. Then there was another large acquisition for a lot of money. This was an enormous deal. And I pushed my partners, we got to do this deal now. What happened right then? COVID. If we had not done the deal several months before, COVID would have hit, would have destroyed the business.
So you also have good insight. You have good visionary skills, which is very necessary in business.
Yeah, it's a spider sense. It's not always 100%, but there's time when you need to exit. There's also times when you need to exit on a certain project. Something's just not working. So you're not going to get a square peg in a round hole. You need to change course. You need to drop it and go to the next thing. And again, not being afraid of failures. I used to keep a chart in my office with all the failed projects, little brass plaque for every failed project. And it had 30 brass plaques and they were all filled up. And that was like 20 years ago. Okay, so you're going to have like 14 failures for every real big win.
Wow. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob, we only have 3 more questions left, then we'll wrap it up. How important is having a purpose in business, and what is your purpose?
Well, my purpose is sort of to change the world. It's a little more lofty, a purpose, and to really reach out and change others' lives. So that's sort of been my purpose. But I think most people, they're not going to be so charitable. I think they just want to take care of their families or take care of themselves, or maybe they want certain physical positions or certain status. You got to decide what's really, really important to yourself long term. and how do you get there without really hurting others?
But if you have a business, for those entrepreneurs that have a business, would you recommend they get a purpose? Is it necessary to have a successful business to have a purpose attached to that business?
Oh, listen, you got to have the right product at the right price. You can have a great product, but if it's priced wrong, you're going to fail. You can have a so-so product, but you do the right marketing, you can also succeed. You got to hit all those parameters. You got to have the right product that people want, that they're willing to pay for the price they're willing to pay for it, and then have the ability to reach out to market it, to reach the people that you want to sell it to.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. All right, second to last question. What would you like to accomplish in the next 10 years or so, and why? What's next?
Eventually, I'd like to build my own museum so I could take, I'm a very serious art collector, and I'd like to share the art. I've also accumulated one of the largest large-scale Bible collections in the world, private. And so that'll be donated to some museum in the future. But I think I would like to, in terms of personal goals, those are just like kind of fun stuff on the side. I would like to really come up with some cures to the aging riddle and to come up with cures for some diseases. There's a lot of people who are suffering very much in terms of their health. So I'd like to try and take the data that is out there, the information is out there, and somehow accumulate it into one type of center where we can get all the research going in one place, in one direction, and then bring that to the world and really change so many people's lives in terms of their health, longevity, and their level of health.
Dr. Bob, just a bonus question is, I meant to ask this earlier. What if you got your wish? Forget about the whole AI stuff, but what if we solve the riddle of anti-aging and people can live indefinitely? We got a population problem, and some people don't see it that way. I mean,
Yeah.
I see it that way because if you got 8 billion people and most of them are living hand to mouth, that's the problem, right? So
Yeah.
if everybody can live indefinitely, they're going to produce indefinitely, and the globe can only hold so many people. I mean, Charles Darwin said at the end of his Origin of Species book, one of the biggest science books in the world. This was 150 years ago, 200 years ago. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, if we reach that point and get your goal, what happens next?
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much my goal in terms of living forever. It's the quality of life during the lifespan where you're around. I mean, we all want to keep going, but if your health isn't there, I mean, it's not too much fun. And you're right. There's a lot of socioeconomic problems with this in terms of you have the whole population is switched now to people. The fastest growing patient population is those 85 and above. I mean, that's why Social Security used to work, because people would die when they were 65 and nobody really was collecting Social Security. Average lifespan for thousands of years was 25 to 30. Then at the turn of the century, it was like, 45, and then now it's 70 to 85. If you have everybody's, and you're not having the birth rate. Elon Musk talks about that we're going to have a great drop in the population. You're not going to have young workers. We're going to have a population problem, not an overpopulation, but underpopulation. And now people are having no kids at all, or 1 or 2 kids versus 8. So it's a different dynamic.
Absolutely. Something in nature has to correct it somewhere.
Either that, or we'll end up just killing ourselves off. We'll end up self-correcting.
Little black humor here.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Last question. What would you like to be your legacy to this world?
My legacy is of the lives that I've touched and the changes I've made, the things I've created will go on to continue to change lives and better people. I'm trying to create things that go beyond me, and the same thing that my mentors tried to do the same thing, who created, whether they created bodybuilding or some type of medical care or some kind of thought process. I'm hopeful that these things will continue on beyond me, and I'll be more so remembered for the way that I help people versus what I owned or what I had.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. I want to conclude and say I'm honored to have you here. Very, very appreciative of you taking the time out today and for me and my audience and sharing your story and your wisdom here. So I'd like to leave the floor to you before we conclude out. Anything you'd like to say or anything at all? The floor is yours. Thank you.
For those entrepreneurs out there, for those people that are feeling down or depressed or whatever, you can fight through this. You can make the changes in your life. But you cannot give up. And you got to be kind to the others around you, because you never know
that one person that you've shown kindness to could be that magic connection. You know, a lot of the billionaires, they walk around with sloppy clothes and sandals and a ripped t-shirt. I'll leave you with this one funny story. I have like one of the large mansions in Chicago, and it was like 11:30 at night, and I have the owners of Bank of Bangkok and a team of 20 medical people from the biggest hospital in Thailand coming to visit me the next morning. So I'm sweeping with a torn t-shirt and my sweatsuit, and I'm sweeping in front of the entrance of the place and sweeping the leaves out of the way. And this young yuppie couple is walking by, and the guy goes, "My God, you work at 11:30 at night?" I go, "Yeah, the old bastard that owns this place is making me work. I make minimum wage. What am I supposed to do?" And he's walking away with his girlfriend. He goes, "Boy, honey, aren't you glad you're not stuck with a poor bastard like that?" She goes, "Oh yeah, that would be horrible." So it's kind of funny. So you never know who you're running into. They didn't know that I was the owner, so it's funny.
Yeah. You live in Chicago and Montana.
Well, I live in Chicago, Montana, and I'm also in Florida.
Oh, Florida. Okay.
So well, I used to also live in Bali and Beijing and a bunch of other places, but I don't really do the overseas stuff anymore.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bob. Appreciate you being here. And where can they find out more information about your website or anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, just drbobgoldman.com, and the International Sports Hall of Fame is another cool website, and our medical website is worldhealth.net.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob, I'm going to conclude out. If you could wait in the green room after this, I definitely want to say bye to you. So thank you, Dr. Bob.
Sure.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. This is Dr. Anthony M. Criniti IV, also known as Dr. Finance. You've been watching the Dr. Finance Live podcast. If you want to find out more information about me or any of the things that we're doing here or this episode, go to drfinance.info. Also, don't forget to, if you're interested in finance, pick up the copy of The Necessity of Finance, wrote in 2013. The most important lessons in economics and finance. That's more for the masses, folks. But if you want to give yourself headaches, The Survival of the Richest, about 500+ page book, published 2016. Message coming true now more than ever nowadays. But thank you, folks. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe. We're going to put this out on YouTube and blast it to 20+ major podcast directories. We're going to see you on the next episode again. Thank you, folks. Appreciate everyone. Have a great day.